Chapter 1170. Stop. The two masked gunmen standing next to Rong Mingxing raised their guns at Gun Yanji. The black muzzles of the guns were aimed at Gun Yanji, and a murderous aura assaulted her. Gun Yanji retracted her hand and turned to look at Reinitz behind her. Don't go too far. Keeping her alive to threaten me? Believe it or not, I'll die with you right now. Reinitz looked at Gun Yanji with his hands behind his back, his expression uncertain. Was he willing to give up on the 99th step? Rong Mingxing was indeed an accident, and he had never intended to capture her. What Gun Yanji said made sense. Rong Mingxing was a diplomat from the Wuxia Imperial Embassy in India. If anything happened to her, the aftermath might not be so easy to clean up. But what if he put it another way? Reinitz walked up to Gun Yanji and smiled. Actually, I'm helping you. I heard that you have a rule that people of your status can't meet foreign nationals alone. So if you two are together, you can testify for each other. Gun Yanji, she had indeed forgotten about that, but she and Rong Mingxing were being held hostage. How could the situation be the same? Gun Yanji couldn't help turning to look at Rong Mingxing. The expressions on her face were extremely varied, from anger to shock, and now panic and disbelief. She looked at Reinitz again, and for some reason, Gun Yanji felt a murderous aura from Reinitz's aura. She didn't know how to describe her feelings. Like a small animal's natural ability to predict dangerous environments, she had a strong feeling that if Rong Mingxing didn't leave this time, she probably wouldn't be able to leave. In a moment of desperation, Gun Yanji grabbed Reinitz's wrist that was hanging by his side and shook her head at him pleadingly. Her lips moved silently as she mouthed to him, "Don't kill her, please." The expression on her face was so vivid and striking that Reinitz couldn't take his eyes off her. He slowly raised his other hand, the other hand that wasn't being held by Gun Yanji. There was a gun in that hand. Gun Yanji's entire body trembled imperceptibly. Reinitz held the gun and pointed it at Rong Mingxing. "You want me to let her go? But what if she tells others about us? As far as I know, she doesn't get along with you." "About us? What do we have?" "Reinitz, don't talk nonsense." Gun Yanji was about to lose hope. She could only pray that Rong Mingxing didn't understand German and didn't know what Reinitz was saying. But how could she not know what Reinitz meant when he pointed a gun at her? Rong Mingxing really didn't understand German, but seeing Reinitz's movements and Gun Yanji's tight grip on Reinitz's arm, she could roughly guess that Reinitz wanted to kill her, and Gun Yanji was desperately trying to save him. In fact, Rong Mingxing knew that Gun Yanji couldn't even protect herself. The director of the Foreign Federal Intelligence Agency was clearly determined to get his hands on Gun Yanji. As a small fry, he was probably just cannon fodder. A bitter smile and helplessness appeared on her face. She knew this would happen, but fortunately she had already made up her mind to exchange a life for a life. This was her sin, so let her pay for it. Rong Mingxing was very afraid of death, but she was even more afraid of having a guilty conscience for the rest of her life. Gun Yanji turned around in a panic and happened to meet Rong Mingxing's eyes. Gun Yanji's heart sank when she saw the determination in her eyes, as though she was facing death with equanimity. She didn't want to see another of her own people die for her. The two Special Operations Forces field agents who died in Germany were already her lifelong nightmare. If Rong Mingxing was added to the mix, Gun Yanji felt that she would really have to die to atone for her sins. The two field agents could be said to have died in the line of duty. And Rong Mingxing had chased after her completely for her. "I promise you. Let her go, I beg you, let her go." Gun Yanji whispered in German and made up her mind. Would He Jichu and Hua Xiaoheng appear at this time? Gun Yanji knew that her life wasn't in danger, and Reinitz wouldn't kill her because she still had value. But Rong Mingxing, Gun Yanji really didn't know what He Jichu and Hua Xiaoheng would do. What if they didn't arrive in time? But she didn't dare gamble. She couldn't wait to see their actions. She didn't want to owe another life. Reinitz also breathed a sigh of relief. Unless it was absolutely necessary, who would want to hurt the Wuxia Empire's diplomats? But their plan couldn't be ruined because of an insignificant person. Reinitz held the gun and tilted his head. "Come inside." Turning around, he took Gun Yanji's hand and walked into the main hall of the Taj Mahal where he and Gun Yanji had just been. The other two masked gunmen escorted Rong Mingxing inside. After Gun Yanji followed them in, she quickly glanced at where they were standing. Reinitz was really an expert because the position he chose to stand in was a blind spot. If there was a sniper outside at this time, he wouldn't be able to aim and shoot at all. Gun Yanji was secretly vigilant. Reinitz was a very cautious person and also very cunning. It was probably wishful thinking to expect him to be emotional. Reinitz let go of her hand and walked up to Rong Mingxing with the gun. He pressed it against her forehead and whispered something. Rong Mingxing looked up at him inexplicably. Reinitz let go of his other hand at this time, and a very old pocket watch hung from his palm. It hung in the air for a long time. The watch chain should be pure gold. Although it had faded, it was still yellow, but it wasn't as dazzling as new gold. Rong Mingxing's gaze couldn't help but be attracted by the pocket watch hanging in front of her eyes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Reinitz murmured the hypnotic guide to guide Rong Mingxing. Gunyanji only took one look before she felt dizzy and hurriedly looked away. The two masked gunmen beside Rong Mingxing also seemed to be hypnotized at the same time. They still maintained their original standing posture, but there was no more force in their hands. Rong Mingxing broke free from their shackles but didn't run away. She stared blankly at Reinitz and was led into the world of hypnosis by him. Relax your body now, especially your brain. Don't think about anything, don't look, don't listen. When you wake up, it's already late at night and your world is dark. You just ran all day and are hungry. You have to go back and eat. Miss Gu got separated from you. Go back and tell them that you looked around but couldn't find her. Although Gu Nianji wasn't looking at Reinitz, she could still hear his words. Gu Nianji was extremely surprised to see him hypnotize Rong Mingxing here. It wouldn't be bad if this succeeded. At least she was sure that Reinitz wouldn't kill Rong Mingxing. Gu Nianji had also used this kind of hypnotic brainwashing on Tang Guiren before. However, compared to Reinitz, Gu Nianji's skills were still too shallow. Reinitz urged 3 people at once, and even the 2 masked gunmen were hypnotized by him. The 2 men quickly put away their guns, took Rong Mingxing's arm with blank expressions, and turned to take her away. Send her back to the Wuxia Empire Embassy in New Delhi after dark, Reinitz ordered lightly. This was the hypnotist's order, and it would be rooted in the depths of the hypnotized person's consciousness. Carrying out this kind of order would become the hypnotized person's instincts. So there was no need to worry that they would change midway. Soon the 2 men left with Rong Mingxing. Gunyanji came back to her senses and was sweating all over. She also looked at Reinitz as if she had just woken up from a nightmare. Reinitz turned around and saw Gunyanji's pale expression. Her eyes were extremely tired, but she forced herself not to fall to the ground. Reinitz sighed inwardly. It seemed that Li Dishi knew the Gu family better than he did. Sure enough, hypnosis didn't work on them. This was because the person who created this hypnosis was said to be Gu Nianji's grandfather and Gu Xiaowen's father, Gu Haoza. This set of hypnosis was said to be a method obtained from ancient Indian books. It could be said to be a kind of sutra of yoga, and it had been improved by a genius psychologist, Gu Haoza. Reinitz was one of the few professionals who could successfully perform this set of hypnosis. However, it had never worked on Gu Nianji. Of course, perhaps it was because he had never been able to achieve the inner peace needed to perform this set of hypnosis when facing Gu Nianji. Peace. So it was reasonable that it didn't work. Gu Nianji wiped the sweat from her forehead and asked in a low voice, "Are you really going to let my little friend go? What else can I do? Do you think hypnosis can be used just like that?" Reinitz looked at her with his hands clasped behind his back. He didn't let Gu Nianji see that his hand holding the gun was spasming and trembling. It took a lot of energy to perform this set of hypnosis. Reinitz was now severely exhausted. Even a 7 or 8-year-old child could probably knock him down with one punch. However, he couldn't let Gu Nianji know this, so he forced himself to talk to her as if nothing had happened. Gu Nianji nodded reluctantly and asked tentatively, "Those 2 people sent her back, but you don't have any helpers now? Serious, are you concerned about me?" Reinitz's eyes lit up, and he suddenly felt all the strength in his body return. "Don't worry too much, baby. I still have a lot of people lying in ambush in places you can't see. Gu Nianji? Come, don't forget what you promised me." Reinitz waved at her. "Help us find this thing and we might be able to find your father's whereabouts. It doesn't matter if he's dead or alive." This was the second night watch, chapter 1163, The Founder. It was the 3rd night watch today. A reminder for everyone's recommendation votes. Don't vote for the monthly votes yet. Wait until the end of the month to vote for double. It was 8 o'clock in the evening, the 3rd night watch. Moi. Chapter 1171. Gu Nianji had originally planned to quickly contact Hijichu and ask them to rescue her while Reinitz had no helpers by his side. Now that she heard that Reinitz had set up an ambush elsewhere, she was instantly discouraged. That's right. With Reinitz's status and means, how could he only have these 2 people by his side? Reinitz saw Gu Nianji suddenly become listless and smiled. He took out his phone, opened an encrypted file and handed it to Gu Nianji. "Serious, I know you're the smartest. I don't think anyone else can guess the meaning of this poem other than you. Gunyenji originally wanted to ignore Reinitz, but she caught a glimpse of the poem from the corner of her eye. It was the first part of the poem on the note Reinitz had given her. Pursing her lips, she took the phone from Reinitz's hand. She was indeed very curious. She really wanted to know what her grandfather, Gu Hausa, had taken from the Gestapo's Federal Intelligence Service and made them pursue it for half a century. And Reinitz even knew her grandfather's name. This was information that even Hua Xiaoheng and the others couldn't find. She also didn't know if He Zhichu knew her grandfather. Gunyenji's thoughts ran wild as she looked down at the document. Reinitz showed her a high-resolution photo of a piece of stationery. However, she could tell that the letter was quite old. The paper was slightly yellowed, but the handwriting was still very clear. It was her father's, Gu Xiangwen's, handwriting. His impetuous mood settled down when he saw the neat and tidy running script and the elegant English handwriting. Gunyenji looked down. "Father, I've thought about it for a long time, but I still can't agree with you. This thing has too many implications, and Japan and Germany still haven't given up on the pursuit. We must consider it carefully. I don't want this thing to cause trouble for my children in the future, but I also don't want what you risked your life for all those years ago to be meaningless. So I put it somewhere far away from my family. If one day someone wants to find this thing, they must pass my test. Because this thing must never fall into the hands of someone with evil intentions." Then there was a poem that Gunyenji couldn't be more familiar with. Taj Mahal, The Eternal Tear by the Indian poet Tagore. "These was the hope in your heart built Tofkam's diamond sand pearls like thepsp, shimmering of rainbows in empty horizons. Let it be hidden only let the sanitier drop glisten puri upon the cheek of time. This Taj Mahal. This is the hope of your heart, inlaid with gems, diamonds and pearls. Like the magic flash of the rainbow on the empty horizon. Let it hide, only when the tears fall only the eternity of time will shine." She swiped open the page and flipped to the second page. She saw another Tagore poem, the most distant twainth the furthest distance in the world. "Themist distant twainth world dis nathe from birth to fiend itis when I sit in the area that you didn't understand to love you. Not from birth to death, but I sit by your side, but you don't understand that I love you. But you don't understand that I love you." There were only the first 4 lines of the poem, and it was completely different from Gu Xiangwen's handwriting. The piece of paper also looked much newer, unlike the yellowed letter paper. This picture probably had nothing to do with Gu Xiangwen. As for who it had to do with, Gunyenji didn't want to guess. She only glanced at it and flipped back to the previous page as if nothing had happened. She handed the phone back to Reinitz. "This poem is the only clue?" Reinitz took the phone with mixed feelings. He wanted to ask her if she had seen the poem on the second page, but when he caught a glimpse of her face, he swallowed the idea. He turned off the phone and nodded. "I've read all of your father's early letters and manuscripts. This thing is the closest to what we're looking for. We believe that the whereabouts of that thing is related to this letter." Gunyenji thought about it silently for a while and asked, "Can you tell me what that thing is?" Not only had the Gestapo been searching for it for half a century, but her father had also written a letter to her grandfather to discuss the whereabouts of this thing. He had also said that he didn't want to cause trouble for his children. Gunyenji wasn't sure if she had been born when Gu Xiangwen wrote this letter. Reinitz hesitated for a long time until Gunyenji said impatiently, "If you don't tell me, I won't have any clues at all. How can I help you find it? It doesn't matter if you waste your time, but don't waste my time. Also, let me clarify again. This thing belongs to my family." "My family?" Reinitz was amused by her. He shook his head and said softly, "It's a set of data." Gunyenji's heart skipped a beat. She knew it had something to do with data. "Is it scientific research? What kind of scientific research?" Gunyenji pretended to be curious. "I don't know about that." Reinitz refused immediately. "That's not a lot of data. It's about 100 pages of letter paper." "That's not a lot?" Gunyenji was shocked. "The letter paper is A4 and it's a letter size. A4 paper was the standard in the Wuxia Empire. Size was the standard in the United States." Reinitz thought about it. "It's probably a letter size. There's so much stuff. Why would it be hidden here?" Gunyenji's head hurt. She looked around the Taj Mahal and finally asked, "I haven't explored this place yet. Can I look around?" "Of course." Reinitz walked to her side and took her hand. "But you have to listen to me and follow me. Otherwise, my friends hiding in the dark won't be happy to see you wandering around alone." This was a warning to Gunyenji not to try and escape under the guise of sightseeing. Gunyenji was speechless. She had already given up on that idea a long time ago, okay? But Reinitz didn't believe her. He stubbornly held her hand and toured the now empty Taj Mahal. After leaving the main hall, they had actually toured more than half of the Taj Mahal. They looked at the side halls, bell towers and pillars in the four corners. It didn't take long to admire the beautiful architecture of the Taj Mahal. However, Reinitz held her hand the entire time. From a distance, they looked like a young couple touring the scenic area. Gunyenji's mind was on the poem and pondered how to decipher it, but Reinitz was deliberately acting affectionately. He knew someone was watching them from behind. He was waiting for that person to lose his cool. Hijichu was about to explode from anger. First, Reinitz attacked from the back and almost killed an entire team of his men. Now, he saw Reinitz brazenly holding Gunyenji's hand and strolling around the Taj Mahal like a couple. Hijichu held the binoculars and wanted nothing more than to take a knife and cut off Reinitz's hand. After watching for a while, he threw the binoculars away in frustration and took out his phone to dial a number Hua Xiaoheng had given him. This wasn't Hua Xiaoheng's usual phone number, but a temporary number used for missions. Communication was also completely through the Huaxia Empire's self-developed Nandu communication satellite navigation system, so there was no need to worry about foreigners eavesdropping or leaking secrets. The phone rang 3 times before someone picked up. The voice was probably coming from a voice changer, so it wasn't Hua Xiaoheng's voice at all. "Professor He, what's the matter?" The tone was still Hua Xiaoheng's. Hijichu suppressed his anger and lowered his voice to say, "How much longer do you want to wait? Did you actually come to India?" "Of course I'm here," Hua Xiaoheng said calmly. "I saw everything you saw." Hijichu was silent for a minute. "You're not angry?" Hua Xiaoheng shook his head. "Can't you see that he did it on purpose? Besides, the target isn't in danger. He should be looking for clues right now, so don't complicate things. All you care about is the mission. The mission. Is it because of your mission that you won't even blink no matter what?" Hijichu was irritated by Hua Xiaoheng's calm attitude. "Don't let me be wrong about you. I'm telling you I can change my mind at any time." Hua Xiaoheng pursed his lips and hid between the branches of a large tree. The thick shade of the tree blocked his and his companion's figures. He looked ahead vigilantly, aware of the movements of the people in the Taj Mahal. "Professor He, don't be impatient. We've been preparing for so long, so why fail at the last moment?" Hua Xiaoheng took out a cigarette and put it in his mouth. He wanted to smoke, but he remembered that he was in the bushes, so he gave up on the idea. He only held the cigarette in his mouth to satisfy his craving. Hijichu listened to Hua Xiaoheng's words and sneered. "Fine, you have the demeanor of a great general who can decide a victory from 1,000 miles away. I'm just an insignificant pawn. However, I still have to tell you that if the target is in danger, our agreement is null and void." This meant that if Gunyenji was really in danger, Hijichu would disregard his cooperation with Hua Xiaoheng and directly rush out to fight Reinitz. Hua Xiaoheng took the cigarette out of his mouth and crushed it into powder. He jumped off the tree and threw it into the river nearby. On the other side of the Taj Mahal, Gunyenji and Reinitz had already walked hand in hand to the front of the tunnel. It was already evening and the sun was setting. The afterglow shone on the front of the Taj Mahal and dyed the pure white Taj Mahal a reddish-orange. Gunyenji walked a few steps along the tunnel and her eyes fell on the reflecting pool next to the tunnel. From this angle, the entire Taj Mahal could be seen in the reflecting pool, and the afterglow of the setting sun perfectly framed the Taj Mahal in gold. From the reflecting pool, the afterglow of the setting sun was like the rainbow light emitted by the jewels on the crown. It was dazzling. Gunyenji thought it was beautiful. She quickly took out her phone with her other hand and said to Reinitz, "Can you let go of my hand? I want to take a photo of the Taj Mahal." Reinitz let go of her hand and Gunyenji held the phone with both hands. She found the right angle and snapped several photos. After taking the photos, she opened the photo album and swiped through them one by one. Suddenly she let out a soft gasp. She took a few steps back and looked at the Taj Mahal again. Then she looked at the reflecting pool and looked at the photos on her phone again. Amused, she showed the photos to Reinitz. "Look, doesn't this Taj Mahal in the reflecting pool look like the head of a girl wearing a crown?" This was the first night watch, chapter 1164, The Girl Wearing a Crown. It was the third night watch today. A reminder for everyone's recommendation votes. Don't vote for the monthly votes yet. Wait until the end of the month to vote for double. The second night watch at 1 p.m., and the third night watch at 8 p.m. Moi. Chapter 1172. Reinitz leaned over and pressed his head against Gunyenji's as he looked at the photo she had just taken on her phone. The photo was very beautiful, and the angle perfectly captured the reflection of the top half of the Taj Mahal on the water. In the clear blue reflection pool, the figure of the Taj Mahal was like a dream. The pure white Taj Mahal was dyed orange in the sunset, and in the reflection pool, it happened to be upside down. The pointed pagoda on the roof became the lower jaw of the girl's head, and the round roof was the girl's round face. The complex leaf-shaped pattern on the cross-section of the roof was the girl's long and narrow phoenix eyes. Her eyes were slightly closed as if she was sleeping. From the angle of the photo, a stone pillar in front of the Taj Mahal became the girl's straight nose bridge. The two smaller roofs of the Taj Mahal and the large roof were reflected in the reflection pool, forming a crown. Gunyanji carefully looked at the girl's head in the reflection of the Taj Mahal and thought it was a bit familiar. Pure white skin, a round face, slender eyebrows and a small cherry mouth. This appearance was a bit like the photo of Gunyanji when she was a child. Or rather, it was similar to the doll when she was a child. Of course it looked more like when Shui, because when Shui was older and more mature. Gunyanji's current appearance was completely different from when she was a child. Thinking about it this way, could she have looked similar to when Shui when she was a child? This was a new discovery for Gunyanji. Because she had hated when Shui from the beginning, and she herself had grown up to look completely different from when she was a child, she had never thought about it in this direction. This time, the girl's head in the reflection pool of the Taj Mahal seemed to evoke this sense of similarity. Gunyanji pursed her lips and put this unpleasant thought to the back of her mind. She focused on the Taj Mahal and the poem. She walked back and forth a few more times in the corridor in front of the Taj Mahal. Her eyes were still attracted by the girl's head in the reflection pool. Gunyanji couldn't help but think of two lines in the poem. This waste hope in your heart built Ofkam's diamonds and pearls. The pillars of the Taj Mahal used to be inlaid with many gems, but they were all pried away during the World War. For example, the shorter pillar in front of the Taj Mahal was the one that looked like a girl's straight nose in the reflection pool. As they got closer, they could see the potholes left behind by the jewels that had been pried away. The pillar was not tall, and there was a small umbrella-shaped pagoda at the top. Gunyanji's heart skipped a beat. She walked over and walked around the pillar to look at it. This pillar was inconspicuous among the buildings of the Taj Mahal, but in the reflection pool of the Taj Mahal, it was the centermost position. Does it have any special meaning? Gunyanji's intuition told her that this place looked ordinary, but it was actually hiding something. She scrutinized the pillar carefully, not missing a single spot. Soon, she found a line of words engraved in Sanskrit near the top of the pillar. Gunyanji didn't understand Sanskrit, but she could look it up online. Scanning the line of Sanskrit, Gunyanji used graphic recognition to extract the Sanskrit, then found the Sanskrit translation website and entered the line of words. The translation displayed on the website was, "These wasti hope in your heart. Gunyanji, F***ck this is going to cause trouble." Her expression was a little agitated, and her hands trembled slightly. "What's wrong? Do you think there's something wrong with this pillar?" Reinitz walked over and stood beside her. They looked up at the pillar together. The pillar was indeed not tall. Reinitz was about 1.88 meters tall. Standing in front of the pillar, he only needed to raise his hand to touch the top of the pillar. "Thehopine your heart built Ofkam's diamond sand pearls?" Gunyanji murmured this sentence. "Look, doesn't this look like the poem? This pillar was once inlaid with a lot of jewels." Reinitz looked at it for a while. "Many places in the Taj Mahal are inlaid with a lot of jewels, not just this pillar. What do you want to say?" "But only this pillar, is Thehopine your ear." Gunyanji pointed to a line of Sanskrit near the top of the pillar and said, "Look, this is Sanskrit. I just translated it." Reinitz's heart skipped a beat. This is it. He had been walking around the Taj Mahal for more than half a month, but he had never paid attention to this pillar, let alone the line of Sanskrit on it. But he couldn't be blamed for this. There were only about 10,000 people on the entire blue planet who could speak Sanskrit, and most of them were Brahmins of this country. And there were less than 1,000 people who could read Sanskrit. Reinitz's main profession was not linguistics, so it was normal that he did not know Sanskrit. Moreover, his attention was not on this inconspicuous pillar. No matter who came to the Taj Mahal, their eyes would only be on its main hall. Gunyanji also came out to take a walk because she couldn't find any clues in the main hall. Taking pictures was also a subconscious action of her as a tourist. For her, the greatest pleasure of traveling was taking pictures, nothing else. Reinitz's attention was also drawn to this pillar. If this is the place, then it's even stranger. Could this pillar be hiding the data? Reinitz muttered to himself as he walked around the pillar again and again. Finally, he raised his hand, stood on his tiptoes, and reached for the small umbrella-shaped spire at the top of the pillar. The inside of the spire was hollow, just enough for one hand to reach in. Reinhardz's hand circled around the inside of the pillar, and his face finally froze. He felt a small box the size of a lighter which was fixed to the pillar wall. He touched it himself again and discovered that it was probably taped to it. Reinhardt was speechless. He took out his military knife, climbed to the top of the pillar with one hand and reached in with the other. He used the knife to separate the tape, then pulled hard and took out the small lighter. There really is something? Gunyanji was also very surprised and she smiled happily. Quick, look at what it is. Reinhardt looked at the lighter in his hand. To be precise, it was not a lighter but a small iron box the size of a lighter. This small iron box was locked with an even more exquisite little lock. After Reinhardt looked up and down, he took out a small tool from his military knife string and stuck it into the keyhole of the lock. His hand cautiously swayed around the keyhole, looking for the place where the keyhole was connected. Finally, with a click, the small lock was unlocked. Gunyanji was speechless. He actually knew how to pick locks. Reinhardt turned around to see her surprised expression and he was overjoyed. He suddenly couldn't help but bend over and quickly kiss her forehead. Thank you, Sirius. This action made Hijichu, who was hiding nearby, unable to tolerate it any longer. F***CKU. Hijichu threw away the binoculars again, and with a gun in one hand, he slammed the windowsill with the other and jumped down. All teams attention. All teams attention. Target, Tunnel Plaza. Target, Tunnel Plaza. Hijichu led his own people and ran toward where Reinhardt and Gunyanji were standing with a murderous look on their faces. This was the first night watch, Chapter 1165, Finding the First Pass. It was the third night watch today. Remind everyone of your recommendation votes. Don't vote for the monthly votes yet. Wait until the end of the month to vote for double. 8 o'clock in the evening, the third night watch. Moi. Chapter 1173. Reinhardt finally kissed Gunyanji. Although it was only on her forehead, and although it was only an expression of surprise, he still managed to kiss her. At that moment, he felt that his life was complete and that he no longer had any regrets. She was such a beautiful woman. Even the skin on her forehead was so soft and smooth. When his lips pressed against hers, he felt as if his lips were about to burn. He was on the verge of exploding, but the heat had already spread throughout his body. Reinhardt suddenly felt very hot. Gunyanji couldn't dodge in time and was kissed on the forehead by Reinhardt. The part of her forehead that was kissed by Reinhardt suddenly felt hot. Her heart skipped a beat and she quickly dodged to the side. She frowned and said, "How many times have I told you not to touch me? Why won't you listen? If you continue like this, we won't be able to cooperate." Reinhardt closed his eyes and forced himself to calm down. "I'm sorry, Sirius. I didn't mean to. I'm really too happy." How could Reinhardt not be happy when he finally had a lead on what he had been looking for so long? Last time their bureau was breached by the pink piggy, and almost everything was taken away. As the supervisor, Reinhardt was supposed to bear the main responsibility. However, the veteran figure of their bureau, Li Dishi, stepped in to protect him so he was safe and sound. He wasn't demoted or punished. Deep down he still felt very guilty. He caused such a huge loss to the country, but he didn't reveal who the pink piggy was. This went against his many years of beliefs and principles. But that was a subconscious action. He didn't regret hiding the truth about the pink piggy, but he still felt guilty. This time, if he could successfully find the important data that had been lost for nearly half a century, he would be able to atone for his sins. Gunyanji looked at him speechlessly and pointed to the small iron box in his hand. "Do you think this is what you're looking for? More than 100 pages of Letterzai's data are all in this small iron box?" Reinhardt looked at the rusty little iron box and muttered, "Maybe your father recorded them on microfilm? Or flash memory?" This was the only way he could think of to shrink it. When Gu Haozi took away this data, microfilm and flash memory had not yet been created on the blue planet. But in Gu Xiangwen's hands, perhaps microfilm and flash memory had already been invented. However, the small metal box was too flat. Reinhardt wondered what kind of microfilm or flash drive could be so small. His fingers caressed the small iron box, and with a slight push of his thumb, he opened the small iron box with a click. Gunyanji also looked over with wide eyes. The small metal box didn't contain the microfilm or flash drive that Reinhardt had expected. He was slightly disappointed. Gunyanji didn't think about microfilm or flash memory. She didn't even believe that this was the data they were looking for, because there was only a neatly folded piece of paper in the small metal box. The note was yellowed and looked like it had been there for a long time. It looked similar to the picture on the phone that Reinitz had shown Gunyenji. Why is there only one note? Gunyenji was surprised. Is it a new clue? Reinitz glanced at Gunyenji and took out the note with a headache. He opened it and glanced at it. As expected, it was a paragraph written by Gu Xiangwen. Congratulations on passing the first stage. I don't know why you're looking for the whereabouts of this thing. But before I tell you where it is, you can go to these places to take a look. Then the note wrote the names of a few clinics. Batty Fertility Assistance Center, Parents Clinic in the Labadou Project, Das Fertility Medical Clinic, Leijiwan Infertility Treatment Center. Without exception, these clinics were specialized in childbirth. Gunyenji was confused. What kind of data is it? Why was it all related to childbirth? The corners of Reinitz's eyes twitched imperceptibly. He was about to come up with a random excuse to fool Gunyenji when he suddenly heard a loud bang. The sound was too familiar. Without thinking, he pulled Gunyenji to him and rolled to the ground with her in his arms. He used his body to protect her. A bullet almost brushed past them, sending stone fragments flying in the corridor beside them. Let go of her. I'll count to 3. If you don't let go of her, I'll send you to meet your god. Hijichu's icy voice traveled over. He spoke in perfect Hanover German, and his sonorous tone expressed his deep anger and unwillingness. Reinitz sneered and held Gunyenji in the crook of his arm with one hand as he raised his hand to shoot in Hijichu's direction. Watch out. Gunyenji panicked and struggled with all her might in an attempt to disrupt Reinitz's balance so he wouldn't be able to shoot accurately. However, Reinitz's arm was like cast iron, and he held Gunyenji in place with just one hand. Hijichu's eyes were bloodshot when he saw this. He pointed his submachine gun at Reinitz and Gunyenji, but he didn't dare shoot again. Bullets didn't have eyes. Reinitz held Gunyenji hostage by his side. Although he didn't use her as a shield, who knew if he would suddenly change his mind? How many people could sacrifice themselves for others in a life-and-death situation? Hijichu didn't dare take the risk. He hung the submachine gun on his back and took out a pistol with his other hand. He aimed at Reinitz's leg and fired 3 times. Reinitz hugged Gunyenji and rolled away again. The bullets landed where they were, kicking up a cloud of dust and stone debris and leaving a small crater. Hijichu's men stood guard beside him. They all held submachine guns and didn't miss a single direction. Reinitz quickly issued an order through his Bluetooth headset. Not long after, masked gunmen suddenly emerged from the holly trees around the Taj Mahal's tunnel and fired at Hijichu and his men. Hijichu's men were all wearing bulletproof vests and helmets. When they saw the situation, they quickly turned their guns and shot back at the gunmen. Bang bang bang. Intense gunshots rang out above the Taj Mahal, indicating that a gunfight had broken out there. Gunyenji's ears were about to go deaf, but Reinitz held her firmly in place. She couldn't even raise her arms to cover her ears. Reinitz's men were attacking after the enemy had struck, and they all had their own bunkers. Although Hijichu's men were wearing bulletproof vests and helmets, they could only protect the vital parts of the torso. There were no bulletproof devices for non-vital parts such as the legs and arms. Soon, Hijichu's men were taken down one by Reinitz's masked gunmen. They were either shot in the arm or in the leg and they screamed as they fell. Hijichu also lay down on the ground and rolled on the ground. He was already closer to Reinitz. Stop. Reinitz roared. My gun can penetrate bulletproof vests. Don't think I won't dare to shoot you. He was still a bit afraid of Hijichu because Li Dishi had once told him not to confront Hijichu, but now it was either you die or I die, so Reinitz felt that he might not necessarily listen to Li Dishi. Hijichu froze for a moment and saw Gunyenji in Reinitz's arms. She was so nervous that her face was flushed and she shook her head desperately at him. While he was distracted, Reinitz's masked gunmen had already jumped out of their bunkers. They carried submachine guns and pounced on Hijichu. Gunyenji finally broke down and shouted. "No, Professor He, go. Go." She used all her strength in Reinitz's arms to push him, kick him, bite him and tear him apart. She wanted nothing more than to bite off a piece of flesh from him. The masked gunmen held their guns and aimed at Hijichu's head. They were getting closer and closer. The Taj Mahal, which had just been ringing with intense gunfire, suddenly quieted down, and the atmosphere around them became more and more oppressive. The setting sun shed its last rays of light before disappearing on the western horizon. This was the moment when the sky was about to turn dark, when black and white alternated. Gunyenji watched as the masked gunmen gradually approached Hijichu. Their footsteps were heavy and powerful. Tap 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 tap. It was like iron hooves trampling on her chest. Her eyes were bloodshot, and she was screaming Hua Xiaoheng's name in her heart, but she couldn't say a word. Hua Xiaoheng, are you going to miss it again this time? As if responding to the cries in her heart, the dark sky suddenly fell, and everyone's vision instantly darkened. It was dark. At that moment, a dozen bullets suddenly sprang out of the darkness with sparks that cut through the darkness. They were fired later but arrived first. With a whoosh, they hit Reinitz's masked gunmen almost at the same time. They were all shot in the back of their heads, and their eyes revealed a look of disbelief. Then with a plop, as if in slow motion, they fell on their backs one by one. Gunyanji's eyes lit up. Her face was covered in dust and she looked like a little tabby cat. In the thick night, she saw a dozen tall figures also quietly approaching from all directions. She couldn't sense any murderous intent, but it was more terrifying than any murderous intent. Although she couldn't see their faces clearly, Gunyanji recognized them immediately. The tall man walking at the very front was definitely Hua Xiaoheng. He was finally here. This time he didn't disappoint her. Gunyanji's tears flowed again, but she didn't realize it at all. She just smiled happily and contentedly. This was the third watch, chapter 1166, he's here. It was the third watch today. A reminder for everyone's recommendation votes. Kiss kiss kiss. Asterisk degree asterisk. Chapter 1174. They came in the night, but it was as if they had brought light with them, dispelling the thick darkness. The moon peeked out in the sky and sprinkled its light on the ground, making the dozen or so figures appear even taller. As soon as the gunshot rang out, Reinitz knew something was wrong. They were surrounded. He made a prompt decision and immediately stuffed the note he had found in the pillar into his mouth. He chewed it up before swallowing it. After he finished processing the note, he looked up and saw a red light flash in front of him. A small red dot was aimed at the center of his forehead. Although he couldn't see the red dot, the red light that flashed in front of him made him immediately understand that he was locked on by a sniper rifle. If he moved, he would immediately be shot in the head by the sniper. Reinitz's body instantly stiffened, and he didn't even have time to do anything to Gunyanji. Gunyanji excitedly struggled again. This time she easily broke free from Reinitz's shackles and got up from the ground. She looked back and saw that Reinitz was still in the same position on the ground. His head was tilted, and his gaze fell on the figures in front of him. Gunyanji clearly saw a red dot on Reinitz's forehead. It looked like the light from a laser pointer. Of course, she knew that this red dot was actually a sniper rifle's lock-on. No wonder Reinitz was lying motionless on the ground in the same position as before. His gaze shifted to Gunyanji. His eyes looked so blue under the moonlight that they were almost black. They really looked like the sea under the moonlight. Gunyanji pouted at him and immediately turned to smile. The 10 or so tall figures had already arrived by their side and surrounded them. Gunyanji was very familiar with the figure at the front. She had already recognized it as Hua Xiaoheng. Therefore, when she saw the man's full beard and unfamiliar aquiline nose, she was stunned. The man didn't even look at her. He walked to Hijichu's side with his gun and reached out to him. "Boss, we're late." The voice was low and hoarse, and every sound seemed to be sanded with sandpaper. It wasn't Hua Xiaoheng's voice either. Gunyanji only hesitated for a moment before understanding. Hua Xiaoheng and the others had disguised themselves. Just like every overseas operation of the Special Operations Forces, they would disguise themselves and not be easily exposed. The joy on Gunyanji's face faded and she stood silently to the side. The moonlight was like water, shining on the pure white Taj Mahal, making it look like a bright moon palace. Under the moonlight, the Taj Mahal had a different kind of charm, like a peerless beauty frozen at the most beautiful moment of her life. Hijichu looked at the outstretched hand in front of him. His gaze followed the hand, up the strong arm, and stopped on an unfamiliar face covered in a full beard. He actually modified it, too cunning. Hijichu snorted but didn't take Hua Xiaoheng's hand. Instead, he pushed himself up and sneered, "Thanks to you, I'm not dead yet. You guys really came at the right time." He didn't say anything, but he used his eyes to warn Hijichu not to go overboard. The corners of Hijichu's lips twitched. If Gunyanji hadn't been watching, he would have slapped her. What the hell? He didn't care about Gunyanji's life and used her as bait for Reinitz to take advantage of her. Hijichu raised his head and turned to walk to Reinitz's side. He suddenly raised his leg and kicked Reinitz's chest. Gunyanji trembled in fear and covered her mouth with both hands to stifle the scream she was about to let out. Huo Xiaoheng coughed uncomfortably and said in a hoarse voice, "Boss, let's go quickly." There were corpses everywhere, and the mercenaries He Jichu had brought were already beaten to the point where they couldn't move. As soon as the sun rose, the country's military and police discovered them, so it wouldn't be easy for them to escape. Moreover, because He Jichu acted rashly, the person behind Reinitz didn't come out and only captured Reinitz. He Jichu vented the anger in his chest and clenched his fists. He waved his hand and said, "Tie him up and take him away." Huo Xiaoheng gave his subordinates a look and told them to listen to He Jichu's orders. 2 soldiers silently took a special rope from their waists and tied Reinitz up. They used the international sailor's knot. It was said that the more one struggled, the tighter the knot became. It was very secure. He Jichu finally walked to Gunyanji's side and looked down at the dust on her face. He took out a pack of wet tissues from his pocket and carefully wiped her face. Gunyanji suppressed the excitement in her heart and obediently let He Jichu wipe her face. She stood beside He Jichu and controlled her gaze not to look at Huo Xiaoheng. Huo Xiaoheng also didn't say anything. He was dressed in dark camouflage and had infrared night vision goggles on his head. On his feet were the B-brand military boots that mercenaries often wore. They were said to be strong enough to kill a cow with one kick. He and another colleague dressed as mercenaries stood shoulder to shoulder behind He Jichu and acted like they were protecting their boss. Of course, Gunyanji, who was standing next to He Jichu, was also under his protection. The rest of the people dealt with the corpses on Reinitz's side. The corpses were dragged away and thrown into the river next to the Taj Mahal. The mercenaries He Jichu had brought earlier had their legs or arms injured, but their lives weren't in danger. These people were supported into the dark night and walked towards the jeeps they had brought with them. In the blink of an eye, there were only a few people left in the corridor in front of the Taj Mahal. He Jichu took Gunyanji's hand and asked Reinitz coldly, "What did you find in that pillar?" He Jichu actually didn't want to ask such a ridiculous question. However, Huo Xiaoheng kept sending him messages through his Bluetooth headset and asked him to first find out what clues Reinitz had found. Reinitz smiled. He had just been kicked hard by He Jichu, so his internal organs were shaken and the corners of his lips were bleeding. However, his arms were tied behind his back so he couldn't wipe himself. Under the moonlight, his appearance was very horrifying. Gunyanji turned her head uncomfortably and looked at the Taj Mahal in the distance. Reinitz smiled even more happily. He had already chewed up the note and swallowed it. Even if they killed him and cut him open, they wouldn't be able to find it. "Sorry, there's no more." Reinitz raised his eyebrows and spoke in a very gentlemanly manner. He Jichu frowned. "No more? What do you mean there's no more?" "There's no more means there's no more. You guys came too late. I already ate that thing," Reinitz said politely. Although he was tied up, he still stood ramrod straight like he was going to a palace ball. He Jichu's lips twitched. He was about to tell Huo Xiaoheng that there was nothing he could do when Gunyanji quietly recited the note she had just seen. "Congratulations on passing the first stage. I don't know why you want to track down this thing. But before I tell you where it is, you can go to these places to take a look. Bardi Fertility Assistance Center, the Labadoo Project's Parental Treatment Center, Das Fertility Medical Clinic, Leijiwan Infertility Treatment Center." With Gunyanji's photographic memory, that little note of less than 200 words was a piece of cake. He Jichu, Reinitz, both of them thought, damn, how could they forget about Gunyanji's genius IQ? Only Huo Xiaoheng burst out laughing. He Jichu turned around and glared at him. "How dare you laugh at the boss?" Huo Xiaoheng quickly wiped his smile and looked up. "I wouldn't dare." Reinitz's suspicious gaze lingered on Huo Xiaoheng's face for a moment. He didn't recognize this person at all. With these people's skills, he actually couldn't tell which mercenary group they belonged to, and because of Reinitz's work, he was very familiar with the mercenaries on the Blue Planet. Gunyanji quietly looked down and had a hard time holding back her laughter. He Jichu held Gunyanji's hand and felt her body tremble slightly. He knew she was laughing and he felt even more aggrieved. He gritted his teeth and wrapped his arm around Gunyanji's shoulders to hold her in his arms. He turned around and said sternly, "Let's go." He practically dragged Gunyanji away with him. Huo Xiaoheng's eyes flickered as his gaze swept past He Jichu's back. His burning gaze finally stopped on Gunyanji's back, almost burning a hole in it. He turned around and waved his hand, ordering his men to escort Reinitz to follow. The soldier holding Reinitz put a piece of tape on his mouth, put a woolen cap over his face and pushed him to follow the others. The group of people got into the cars, and the engines roared as they left the Taj Mahal with a roar. Gunyanji and He Jichu got into the car in the middle and sat in the back. Hua Xiaoheng escorted Reinitz over and ordered his men to take him to the car in front. He walked to the car in the middle where He Jichu and Gun Yanji were sitting and pulled the door open. He Jichu slammed the back door and locked it from the inside. Gun Yanji looked at him speechlessly and quietly opened the back door on her side. Then she glanced at Hua Xiaoheng. There was a faint smile in Hua Xiaoheng's eyes as he walked around to Gun Yanji's side, opened the door and slowly sat inside. Gun Yanji moved from the back seat on the left side of the door to the middle seat. He Jichu and Hua Xiaoheng sat on either side of her. This was the safest moment Gun Yanji had felt in days. She smiled as she looked at Hua Xiaoheng on her left, then at He Jichu on her right and nodded in satisfaction. He Jichu's expression was cold as he ordered the driver in front, drive. The driver was also one of the Special Operations Forces field personnel that Hua Xiaoheng had brought with him. He only listened to Hua Xiaoheng's orders. Hua Xiaoheng also nodded and said, drive. Only then did he start the car and leave the Taj Mahal. They got on the highway and drove to He Jichu's apartment in New Delhi. Gun Yanji asked where they were going and thought of Rong Mingxing. She asked anxiously, by the way, where's Rong Mingxing? Have you guys contacted her? He Jichu didn't even look at her as he said coldly, you can't even protect yourself and you still have to worry about others? She's fine and has already returned to the embassy. Gun Yanji breathed a sigh of relief. She smiled at He Jichu ingratiatingly. Thank you, Professor He. He Jichu snorted and didn't hear Gun Yanji say anything else for a long time. He was a little surprised and couldn't help but look at her, only to find that Gun Yanji had already fallen asleep. She had fallen asleep with her head on Hua Xiaoheng's shoulder on the other side. This was the first night watch, Chapter 1167, The Safest Moment. It was the third night watch today. A reminder for everyone's recommendation votes. Don't vote for the monthly votes yet. Wait until the end of the month to vote for double. The second night watch at 1 p.m. and the third night watch at 8 p.m. Moi. Asterisk degree asterisk. Chapter 1175. Hua Xiaoheng was 188 meters tall and was a soldier. Whether he was standing or sitting, he always had a standard military posture, the kind that could be used in textbooks. But this time, he bent his long legs in the spacious back seat of the jeep and slightly tilted his shoulder towards Gun Yanji. He didn't sit properly and was only trying to make her sleep as comfortable as possible. Actually, Hua Xiaoheng's muscles were strong and hard no matter how relaxed he was. Leaning against him wasn't actually comfortable. But to Gun Yanji, Hua Xiaoheng's shoulder was the most reassuring place. But at this time, Hua Xiaoheng only calmly looked straight ahead without any expression on his face. But He Jichu saw very clearly that Hua Xiaoheng's arm had already wrapped around Gun Yanji's waist and was gently supporting her from behind. Hua Xiaoheng only did this to prevent Gun Yanji from sleeping soundly during the bumpy ride. He Jichu looked at them coldly and pursed his lips as he looked out the window. Because of the power outage, there weren't even any street lights on New Delhi's highway. They completely relied on the jeep's headlights for illumination. It was pitch black on both sides outside the window, with only the occasional car headlight passing by and leaving a line of light on their retinas. But at this time there weren't many cars on the highway. Everyone was busy exchanging money at the bank during the day, so they should all be going home to count their money now. He Jichu propped one elbow on the window and supported his chin with the back of his hand. After a moment of silence, he asked quietly, "How are you going to deal with Reinitz? Are you going to kill him?" Hua Xiaoheng looked at He Jichu strangely. "He's not a mercenary. How can I just kill him like that? He was the head of the Gestapo in a large country after all. Haha, you're so generous. I really underestimated you." He Jichu crossed his arms and sneered. "That's right. As long as it can help you complete the mission, you'll pay any price, including your girlfriend or wife, right?" No matter how well-mannered Hua Xiaoheng was, he was still angered by these words. But even if he was angry, no one could read anything from his expression. "Professor He, I'll take it that you spoke without thinking because of Nianji today. Nianji and I both forgive you. But I don't want to hear it a second time." He turned to look at He Jichu, his dark eyes devoid of any emotion. They were so cold that it made people shudder. Of course, He Jichu wasn't afraid of him, but he was still satisfied with his attitude. He snorted softly, "Do you think I'm willing to say that? I don't want to see Nianji fall in love with scum." The corners of Hua Xiaoheng's eyes twitched, and his fingers trembled slightly. He actually had the instinct to pull out his gun. He tried hard to restrain himself from saying more things that he shouldn't say. The yellow camouflage jeep sped on the highway. After more than 10 minutes, the tension between the two gradually eased. Hijichu glanced at Gunyenji's sleeping form and asked Hua Xiaoheng in a low voice, "How do you plan to explain this to Speaker Long?" This was Hua Xiaoheng's own business, so he didn't plan on telling Hijichu. He calmly changed the topic to Reinitz. "I've arranged everything over there. But this time, because of Reinitz, we still fell short of success." "Failed at the last moment? What else do you want?" Hijichu's brows furrowed again, and a trace of disdain flashed in his shimmering, sultry eyes. "For the sake of your stupid plan, you put Nianji in such an unbearable situation. I'm telling you, if it weren't for Nianji, I wouldn't have participated in your stupid plan even if you beat me to death." "Stupid?" Hua Xiaoheng was a bit surprised, and his sharp eyes stared at Hijichu. "Is this how you view this plan? I thought you wanted to help Nianji." "Hijichu." He suddenly looked away, no longer looking at Gunyenji's sleeping face. He secretly clenched his fists to calm the tumultuous emotions in his heart. He said coldly, "Yes, I wanted to help Nianji. That's all." It didn't include helping Hua Xiaoheng build a career. Hua Xiaoheng always felt that Hijichu was implying something, but he couldn't ask him why. He had this feeling for a long time, but if he really wanted to ask, Hijichu wouldn't say a word, even if it was for Gunyenji. Hua Xiaoheng's brows furrowed almost imperceptibly, but he quickly relaxed and said calmly, "That's good. We finally have the same goal." Speaking of Reinitz, why did he want Nianji to help him find something? And what was that note about? Hijichu shook his head. "You'll have to ask Nianji about that. I wasn't there at the time, so I don't know at all." Hua Xiaoheng glanced at him and saw that Hijichu was completely calm. It didn't seem like he was faking it at all, and he didn't have any psychological burden either. Hua Xiaoheng was secretly puzzled. He was about to ask again when Gunyenji began to moan in her sleep. Hijichu and Hua Xiaoheng quickly stopped talking. Hua Xiaoheng patted her back to calm her down and she went back to sleep. Gunyenji was still sound asleep when they arrived at Hijichu's apartment. They were about to get out of the car. Hua Xiaoheng hesitated for a moment, but Hijichu had already carried Gunyenji horizontally in his arms and walked up the stairs to his apartment. Hijichu's villa was located in the wealthy district of the capital of this country. It was a pure white European-style building and was tightly surrounded by a perimeter wall. There were 2 large carved iron gates at the entrance. Their car drove straight through the big iron gate and stopped in front of the 4-story main villa in the courtyard. Reinitz got out of the car behind them and squinted at the house. If it weren't for the tape on his mouth, he would have whistled. He watched Hijichu carry Gunyenji into the main door of the mansion and was slightly surprised. Could Gunyenji be injured? He couldn't help but follow the 2 mercenaries who were escorting him inside. Hua Xiaoheng was still by Hijichu's side as the leader of the mercenaries. Hijichu carried Gunyenji to the master bedroom on the 3rd floor and said to Hua Xiaoheng without turning his head, "I don't care about Reinitz anymore. You can do whatever you want." Hua Xiaoheng was speechless. He crossed his arms and thought for a moment before nodding. "Okay, I'll take over. But you can't stay here." Hijichu snickered and put his hands in his pockets. "Hua Xiao, you have to understand that this is my territory, not yours. What right do you have to order me around?" Hua Xiaoheng replied calmly, "It's up to Nianji. She won't be happy to see you in the same bedroom as her when she wakes up." "You." Hijichu was so angry at Hua Xiaoheng's words that he couldn't refute. Because Gunyenji really did have that attitude towards him. "Hua Xiaoheng, I'm warning you. Don't think that you can use Nianji completely just because she's dead set on you. I'm telling you, as long as I'm here, don't even think about using her." Hijichu pointed a finger at Hua Xiaoheng and tapped the air a few times in a very imposing manner before turning to leave. Hua Xiaoheng stood in the room where Gunyenji was sleeping for a while before taking a deep breath and turning to leave. Hijichu had already gone to the guest room next door to rest and hadn't even eaten dinner. Hua Xiaoheng couldn't be bothered to continue talking to him. He went to arrange for someone to cook and went to the room where Reinitz was being held. Reinitz was locked up in a small guest room on the basement level. The guest room had no windows and only one door to enter and exit. The furnishings inside were also very simple. There was only a bed, a desk and a chair, as well as a simple bathroom with a shower. When Hua Xiaoheng entered, Reinitz was sitting on the chair and stretching his muscles. The ropes on his body had been removed and the tape on his mouth had been removed, but his hands and feet were shackled. Hua Xiaoheng didn't dare be careless when it came to Reinitz. Reinitz had just gone to the bathroom to relieve himself and stayed there for a few minutes to observe the situation around him. In the end, he discovered that it was basically impossible to escape. He was trying to think of a way to contact the people outside when he heard the door open. He turned to see the bearded mercenary leader with a hooked nose walk in. He smiled and nodded at him, then asked him in Chinese, "Which company's mercenary are you? How come I've never seen you before?" Although Hua Xiaoheng already knew from Gun Yanji that Reinitz could speak Chinese, he still looked surprised and seemed very surprised. He froze for a moment before replying in Chinese with a Southeast Asian accent, "I'm a small company that I found myself. I work for Mr. He to make a living." He purposely had a Southeast Asian accent in his Chinese because that was the place that produced the most Chinese mercenaries. Reinitz discreetly inquired about the mercenary leader's background. Hua Xiaoheng was already prepared, so he naturally made up a well-reasoned story. He wasn't afraid that Reinitz would investigate because every piece of information could be verified. However, Reinitz wasn't so gullible. He asked around and was still skeptical. In the end he said, "What exactly does your boss want?" This was exactly what Hua Xiaoheng wanted. He immediately said, "You kidnapped our boss's people, so of course our boss won't let you go. Our boss wants me to ask you, why do you have designs on Miss Gu? How did Miss Gu offend you?" "Offend?" Reinitz shrugged. "She offended me in many ways, but I didn't harm her. Otherwise you can ask her." "Really? Our boss also wants to know why you went to the Taj Mahal to look for something. Does the thing you're looking for have anything to do with Miss Gu?" "Let your boss ask me. I don't talk to small fries like you about this kind of thing." Reinitz became arrogant and ignored Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng had actually pretended to be He Jichu's subordinate to interrogate Reinitz in order to test He Jichu and Reinitz. In fact, with Gun Yanji there, he didn't need to know what they were up to from Reinitz. Now that he realized the relationship between the two of them was a bit subtle, Hua Xiaoheng didn't say anything more and turned to leave. After leaving the room, he personally locked Reinitz's room and carried the key with him. He also ordered the two field agents disguised as mercenaries to guard the room carefully and never speak to Reinitz. After arranging the security in the basement, Hua Xiaoheng returned to Gun Yanji's bedroom upstairs. As soon as he entered, he saw Gun Yanji staring at him from the bed. "You're awake?" Hua Xiaoheng smiled as he walked over. "Are you hungry? I arranged for someone to cook dinner." This was the second watch, chapter 1168, complete use. It was the third watch today. A reminder for everyone's recommendation tickets. It was 8 o'clock in the evening. Mwah. Chapter 1176. Gun Yanji sat up from the bed and stretched. Her torn sleeves fell down. She pouted and said, "I didn't shower, so I didn't sleep well." Hua Xiaoheng was speechless. His heart tightened and he quietly turned around. His voice was a bit urgent. "Go shower, I'll come back later." With that, he quickly left Gun Yanji's master bedroom. Gun Yanji looked at his tall figure in surprise, then looked down at herself. There was nothing wrong? The hunting jacket she was wearing had originally belonged to He Jichu and was dirty. Now that it had been taken off, there was only a white silk shirt and black skinny pants inside. The silk shirt had been torn, but only the sleeves had been pulled off. The rest was fine and she was still dressed. Gun Yanji glanced at her exposed arm and got up to shower. Hua Xiaoheng entered the guest room next to Gun Yanji's master bedroom and locked the door. He also quickly went to the bathroom to wash up. He removed the disguise on his face and changed into a clean black t-shirt and camouflage pants before returning to Gun Yanji's room. Gun Yanji had also finished showering and was drying her hair with a hairdryer. When Hua Xiaoheng came in, she turned off the hairdryer and smiled. "Hua Xiao, I almost didn't recognize you just now." However, she still locked onto Hua Xiaoheng's figure at first glance, even though his voice and appearance were different. Hua Xiaoheng walked behind her and bent down to hug her from behind. He smiled. "But you still recognized me." At that time he was really a bit worried that Gun Yanji would call out his name. Therefore he immediately walked over to He Jichu and reached out to pull him up to show that he was his mercenary subordinate. With Gun Yanji's intelligence, she naturally understood his intentions immediately. As expected, Gun Yanji calmed down after her excitement and didn't make any eye contact with him. Hua Xiaoheng held Gun Yanji's shoulder. "Thank you." Gun Yanji curled her lips and placed her hand on the back of Hua Xiaoheng's hand. "Do we still need to say, thank you to each other?" Although Hua Xiaoheng had refuted He Jichu's words, they still pierced his heart like needles. He had to constantly reflect on whether he was as despicable as He Jichu said. Now that he saw Gun Yanji, his conviction was strengthened. Hua Xiaoheng nodded and leaned over to kiss her. He sat next to her in the opposite direction and told her about Reinitz. "Do you know what he's looking for?" Gun Yanji glanced at him first. "Hua Xiao, did you already know that Reinitz would appear? Do you know that what they're looking for is related to me?" Hua Xiaoheng grunted. I only know the gist of it, and there's someone behind Reinitz. However, because Reinitz is too cunning and kept challenging my and Professor He's bottom line, we weren't able to lure the person behind him out in the end. Gunyanji picked up the comb to comb her hair. She felt a faint sense of joy in her heart and deliberately said casually, Reinitz won't hurt me. Last time when I copied all their system files as the pink piggy, he let me go. What's more, this time he has a favor to ask of me. Xiaoheng was silent for a while and sighed. He nodded and said, Reinitz is too cunning. It's been hard on you this time. He paused and said, my snipers have been locking on to his and his men's positions. As long as he makes a move, we won't be lenient. It wasn't like they hadn't killed people before. As long as Reinitz threatened Gunyanji's life, Xiaoheng wouldn't hesitate to pull the trigger no matter how powerful he was. Of course, after capturing Reinitz was no longer a threat. Killing him now would only complicate the issue and complicate matters. Gunyanji knew that Xiaoheng was subtly expressing that he was also concerned about her. She was very happy, but she didn't show it on her face. She mimicked Xiaoheng and said nonchalantly, I knew you would come. Xiaoheng couldn't help it anymore and hugged her to kiss her. They kissed for a while before Gunyanji told him about the note Reinitz found today. That was left behind by my father, Gu Xianguan. Gunyanji paused and said, Reinitz also mentioned my grandfather, Gu Haoze. She then told him about what Reinitz said her grandfather, Gu Haoze, had taken from their bureau. Reinitz and his bureau have been chasing it for more than half a century and have only found some clues now. Xiaoheng thought about it. So that thing is related to your grandfather. We didn't know about this. Gunyanji froze. You know what they're chasing? Then you know about that thing. It's a set of data. Xiaoheng looked at her steadily. His voice was close to hers, low and magnetic. According to the information we received, this data was the secret experimental data that the famous Japanese numerical unit conducted in the northeast of our country during World War II. Later, on the eve of the end of World War II, it was sent to the Gestapo headquarters in Europe, which was Reinitz's bureau. How important is this data? Even the Japanese officers of the numerical unit didn't dare hand it over to the victorious Allies. Instead, they chose to hand it over to the Gestapo in Europe for safekeeping. Later, that set of data was lost for unknown reasons. Reinitz's bureau announced to the public that the data building suddenly caught fire and destroyed many important materials. We didn't believe it at first. In addition to Reinitz, Japan has also been tracking the whereabouts of this set of data. Everyone knew that the infamous numerical unit of Japan had handed over all their experimental data to the victorious Allies, the United States, in exchange for immunity from prosecution. So there was something they didn't dare to exchange for benefits? Gunyanji's heart sank. It's related to Japan again? Then how did my grandfather get involved in this? Reinitz said that my grandfather was a master of psychology and helped them improve a set of hypnosis methods. But I've never known any master of psychology who was Chinese during World War II. Xiaoheng nodded and his expression became serious. We've never stopped paying attention to anything related to Japan. But your grandfather's situation is indeed new information. We didn't know about it before. I've checked the few clinics mentioned on the note you mentioned earlier. As he spoke, he handed the phone to Gunyanji. Look. Gunyanji took Xiaoheng's phone and looked down. Badi Fertility Assistance Center, Labadou Projects Parental Treatment Center, Das Fertility Medical Clinic, Leijiwan Infertility Treatment Center. They're all clinics here? That's convenient. We can go take a look. Xiaoheng's eyes contained a hint of a smile as he nodded. We'll go tomorrow. I feel like this is a bit unreasonable. I hope the results won't be unexpected. Gunyanji looked at the names of the clinics again and took out her phone to key in. Then she opened her hacking app and entered the back-end system of the clinic's official websites in less than a minute. Xiaoheng was speechless. He shook his head with a smile. Are you addicted to hacking? I can't help it. Xiao can just pretend he didn't see it. My father specifically mentioned these clinics. I can't help it. Gunyanji didn't even look up. Her fingers flew across her phone as she searched for the back-end data and information. The official website was filled with patients' personal data. Gunyanji wasn't interested and didn't find anything interesting. Just as she was about to log out, she saw an interface that led to the official website's financial system. Her heart skipped a beat and she clicked on it. Entering the clinic's financial system, Gunyanji could see at a glance that the clinic received a large amount of charitable donations. As a clinic that treated infertility, shouldn't they be making a lot of money? Why would they need charitable donations? Gunyenji also roughly looked at the clinic's financial situation. Even without the large amount of charitable donations, the clinics were still very profitable. It was interesting that such a profitable clinic received such a large amount of donations every year. Gunyenji dug deeper. She discovered that the clinic's financial system actually hid the donors' documents. Most people wouldn't have discovered it, but unfortunately, it was Gunyenji who they met. Gunyenji only took 5 minutes to crack the password to the hidden documents and discover the real donor behind the scenes, Angel in the World. Gunyenji's heart skipped a beat. She immediately hacked the official websites of several other clinics. Without exception, she discovered that these clinics all received large charitable donations. And the donors of these clinics were all from the same charity fund, Angel in the World. The corners of Gunyenji's mouth twitched. No wonder Angel in the World wanted the Gu family's assets. Long before they coveted the Gu family's assets, they had invested all of their own huge assets into these clinics. Huoxiao, look. Gunyenji showed Huoxiaoheng what she discovered. This was the third watch, chapter 1169, coming to the surface. It was the third watch today. A reminder for everyone's recommendation tickets. Moi. Chapter 1177. Huoxiaoheng froze when he saw that all these clinics had accepted donations from the Angels on Earth Charity Foundation. He couldn't help but recall a piece of information. He thought about it for a while, and his gaze gradually deepened as he said slowly, "That foundation is from Japan, right?" Gunyenji nodded. "Yes, the law firm I hired is currently in a lawsuit against this foundation in their country. I heard that if I win, this foundation will have to cough up everything even if it goes bankrupt. If they couldn't repay it, they would have to mortgage all their assets to Gunyenji. In other words, if the clinics they donated to had signed a donation contract beforehand and weren't free funding, then these clinics were also providing services to Gunyenji. Not all of the charity's money was given for free." Huoxiaoheng's brows furrowed even tighter. He seemed to have thought of something and his brows twitched slightly. His gaze quickly swept from Gunyenji's face to the information of the clinics on his phone. "Looks like we need to go there tomorrow to take a look," Huoxiaoheng muttered. Gunyenji nodded repeatedly. "I'll go too. This kind of place is too strange. It's supposed to be a normal clinic, but it's mixed up with that horrible foundation. It's weird to see. Leave it to me. Don't worry." Huoxiaoheng patted her head. "Are you hungry? Let's go down for dinner." Gunyenji happily agreed and went to the bathroom to change out of her bathrobe. She put on the torn shirt and Hijichu's men's hunting jacket over it before coming out of the bathroom. Huoxiaoheng grabbed her arm unhappily, his expression slightly dark. "Why are you still wearing this? It's all dirty." Gunyenji shook her head nonchalantly. "It's fine. I can't go down in torn clothes, can I?" She opened the hunting jacket to reveal her smooth shoulders. "Look, my clothes are torn. I don't have anything else to change into." This was Hijichu's temporary residence in India. Gunyenji had been sent in while asleep, so she didn't have anything else to change into. Huoxiaoheng was a bit speechless. He opened the master bedroom closet and searched for a long time, but didn't find any women's clothing. There were only some men's t-shirts and shirts. Huoxiaoheng saw that the t-shirts still had tags on them, so they were brand new. He picked the smallest size for Gunyenji and put on a white men's shirt. Gunyenji tucked her t-shirt into the waistband of her trousers and wore the men's shirt like a long coat. The sleeves were rolled up high and piled on her elbows. It looked very interesting. Huoxiaoheng took her downstairs and said, "Let's buy some clothes tomorrow." Gunyenji quickly said, "I don't have time to go shopping. Why don't you go to the hotel where Speaker Long and I are staying and get my suitcase?" This reminded Huoxiaoheng. He took out his phone and said to Gunyenji, "Go eat. I'll make a call first." Gunyenji knew that Huoxiaoheng probably had work to report, so she nodded obediently and went to the dining room to eat alone. The Special Operations Forces field personnel that Huoxiaoheng had brought along this time were also in the dining room. About a dozen of them were enthusiastically watching this country's television. Whether it was news, TV dramas, or entertainment programs, they were all jokes in their eyes. One by one, they laughed so hard that they staggered from side to side, lying on the table and complaining that their stomachs hurt. Gunyenji walked in and greeted them with a smile. What's so funny?" The field personnel who was Huoxiaoheng's driver recognized Gunyenji and quickly pulled out a chair for her to sit down. He said with a smile, "I was watching a series on their TV station just now. The woman was shot in the head by a sniper, and there was such a big black bullet hole in the middle of her forehead. She didn't die, but she said her last words in the male lead's arms for 20 minutes. Gunyenji looked up and saw the large TV screen opposite her. There was a big black hole in the woman's forehead, and she was grabbing the male lead's hand with great sorrow and nagging. Awkward. Gunyenji shook her head and smiled as she knocked the spoon on the bowl. Where's dinner? I'm hungry. Hua Xiaoheng took his phone and walked to the grass behind the villa. He looked up at the stars in the night sky. This was a wealthy area, and even the night sky seemed to be much brighter. The air was fresh and the sky was dotted with stars. There was also a bright half-moon. Every family had a flower garden with all kinds of flowers. It was late spring and the shadows were sparse, and the fragrance of the fragrance wafted. It really was like a paradise. Hua Xiaoheng took a deep breath and dialed General Ji's number. At this time, it was around midnight in the imperial capital. He didn't know if General Ji was working overtime or already asleep. He originally wanted to leave a message, but he didn't expect the phone to only ring once before General Ji picked up. Xiaoheng? How's the situation? General Ji looked at the time. Hua Xiaoheng shouldn't be in country R, where the International Special Forces competition was taking place. Hua Xiaoheng's expression relaxed slightly and he said calmly, everything is normal but there's a situation outside of the plan. I want to ask for your instructions. General Ji said without hesitation, Xiaoheng, I trust you. You can make your own decisions according to the situation. You don't have to ask me for instructions. You know the situation outside is ever-changing. As long as you firmly remember, any decision you make must put the interests of the country and its people first. Yes. Hua Xiaoheng's heart warmed to receive his superior's unconditional support. He immediately replied, I know. Then he explained Gunyenji's situation again. In the end he said, I want Nyenji to follow us. As for Speaker Long, I will call him. I will say that you know about it and ask Nyenji to cooperate with our department's work. General Ji agreed without hesitation. No problem. If Old Long has any questions or dissatisfaction, you can push them all to me. He then reminded Hua Xiaoheng, don't let Old Long know that you called him, understand? Of course not. Hua Xiaoheng smiled. What kind of person did he do for a job? How could he make such a low-level mistake? Speaker Long had always maintained a cautious and watchful attitude toward their department. He wouldn't walk right into the trap and ask for trouble. After reporting to General Ji, Hua Xiaoheng used the voice changer to call Speaker Long. The phone rang a few times before someone picked it up. It was one of Speaker Long's special assistants, but it wasn't Special Assistant Yang. The person looked at the number. It was an unfamiliar number. Thinking that the other party had called the wrong number, he asked suspiciously, May I ask who this is? Hua Xiaoheng used the high-quality voice changer made by the Special Forces to make the call. Even if the other party had audio analysis, they wouldn't be able to crack it. This time he used a slightly higher baritone voice to talk to the other side. He coughed and said, I'm looking for Speaker Long. I'm from Department 6. When the Special Forces contacted their own people overseas, they would usually say that they were from Department 6. When the Special Assistant heard that it was Department 6, he immediately became respectful. Please wait for a moment. I'll go find Speaker Long right away. Speaker Long was in a meeting with his entourage in the room. The person knocked on the door with an anxious expression. Speaker Long, there's an urgent call. Speaker Long immediately stopped the meeting and quickly walked out to answer the call. As soon as he heard that it was Department 6, he immediately asked, May I ask what's the matter? Hua Xiaoheng lowered his voice and said, We have orders from our superiors to ask Miss Gu to assist us in a secret mission. Miss Gu? You mean Nyenji? But she's missing. Speaker Long said bitterly. I'm arranging for people to look for her. Don't worry, I'll find her even if I have to turn this entire city upside down. Hua Xiaoheng said. There's no need. Miss Gu is with us. I just wanted to let you know. Speaker Long was overjoyed when he heard this. The gloomy expression on his face finally dissipated. Are you serious? She's really with you? Yes, she's having dinner. I'll ask her to call you later and bring her luggage from the hotel. Also, there's a major problem with Special Assistant Yang. We're investigating him now. Please assist us in our investigation and detain him immediately. Okay, no problem. I'll send someone to arrest him immediately. Speaker Long's mind was completely filled with news about Gunyenji. He laughed happily. Okay. Sorry for the trouble. Nyenji has never traveled far and is still young. Please bear with her and take good care of her. Knowing that Gunyenji was fine and was with his own people, Speaker Long was truly happy. He went from extreme anger and sadness to extreme joy and excitement in an instant. He felt as if his blood vessels were running out. After Hua Xiaoheng hung up the phone, Speaker Long collapsed on the sofa and almost couldn't move. The special assistant reacted quickly and immediately called the accompanying special healthcare doctor to give Speaker Long oxygen and injections. Only then did his condition improve. As soon as Speaker Long's condition improved, he quickly ordered Special Assistant Yang to be detained. Special Assistant Yang couldn't get in touch with the Secret Service elites all day and was burning with anxiety. Especially when he learned that Rong Mingxing had returned safely, he felt a sense of despair. He tried to test Rong Mingxing several times, but Rong Mingxing was much more cunning than before. She had been with other embassy staff and didn't answer his calls at all. He went to the embassy once, but Rong Mingxing also avoided him. Without the help of the Secret Service elites, Special Assistant Yang found it difficult to move at all. He couldn't do anything, let alone silence Rong Mingxing. However, Rong Mingxing didn't make any special moves. She didn't even take the initiative to talk to Speaker Long. Special Assistant Yang held on to a little hope and stayed by Speaker Long's side. It wasn't until he heard Speaker Long talking to someone on the phone and knew that Gunyanji was fine that he acted like he was facing a formidable enemy and wanted to escape without bringing anything. Before he could run out of the hotel door, he was caught by Speaker Long's bodyguards. "What are you doing? I'm the first secretary of the embassy. You can't do this to me." Before Special Assistant Yang could finish yelling, the bodyguard who caught him sealed his mouth with a piece of tape, then tied him up and took him back to the hotel room to be detained. After Gunyanji finished dinner, Hua Xiaoheng asked her to call Speaker Long. When Speaker Long heard Gunyanji's voice coming from the phone, his heart finally calmed down. Okay. You can assist the comrades of the 6th Bureau. Don't worry about us. We will be departing for Huaxia soon. Speaker Long was very reluctant to part with Gunyanji. You have to pay attention to your safety. Don't show off when you're outside. Protecting yourself is the most important thing. Do you hear me? I'm still waiting for you to come back and train you well. This was the first update of the day, Chapter 1170, Unconditional Support. It was the third update today. A reminder for everyone's recommendation tickets. The second update was at 1 p.m., and the third update was at 8 p.m. Moi. Chapter 1178. Thank you, Speaker Long. Gunyanji was very touched and held the phone with excitement. Her voice trembled as she said, "Don't worry, I will return to work immediately after assisting them with their mission. You have to keep this a secret for me." No problem. I know. Speaker Long nodded repeatedly. You are serving the country, so the Senate will definitely strongly support you. I will have someone write it in your resume. Gunyanji was a little embarrassed and quickly said, No need. I said it's a secret, so don't leave any traces. You can't say that. Speaker Long smiled very comfortably. You work for the 6th Division and bring glory to the Senate. I will remember that. Don't worry. Speaker Long was getting on in years and it wasn't easy for him to find a suitable successor, so he treasured him very much. Gunyanji was young and Speaker Long felt that although she was very capable, her temperament was unstable, so he intended to let her go out to hone herself. Gunyanji was excited by Speaker Long's words and also told him about Rong Mingxing. Speaker Long, there is one more thing. Rong Mingxing helped us a lot this time, so you have to give her credit. When she mentioned Rong Mingxing, Gunyanji couldn't help but think of Special Assistant Yang and Rong Mingxing alone in the embassy. If Special Assistant Yang wanted to do something bad, Rong Mingxing's life might be in danger. Therefore, after thinking about it, Gunyanji decided to tell him that Special Assistant Yang had colluded with a foreign Secret Service elite to harm her and Rong Mingxing. She also said that the 6th Department had coincidentally rescued her and Rong Mingxing when they were tracking the Secret Service elite. This way, she could cover up Rong Mingxing and her experience and create the conditions for the Special Operations Forces to appear in this country. Finally, she said, Speaker Long, Rong Mingxing has evidence of Special Assistant Yang colluding with foreign Secret Service elites. I also have evidence, but I can't go back right now. Please be careful lest he becomes desperate. Speaker Long originally thought that Special Assistant Yang was just jealous. He never expected him to have the courage to collude with foreign hostile forces to harm his own compatriots and comrades. Don't worry, I won't let any of these traitors go. Speaker Long's voice became ruthless. He had always been good-tempered and was known as the good guy in the political arena, but when he was young he had a nickname, Smiling Tiger. He hadn't shown his might for so many years that his subordinates were treating him like a sick cat, right? I believe that Speaker Long will be able to bring those traitors to justice. Gu Nianji said, clenching her fists. Don't worry, Special Assistant Yang has been locked up. Speaker Long calmed himself down and said pleasantly, after your luggage is picked up, we will set off for the Wuxia Empire. Nianji, you'll have to rely on yourself from now on. Be careful. You're not part of Division 6, so you don't have to rush to the front. Do you understand what I mean? Gu Nianji nodded. I know. As he spoke, he wanted to help Rong Mingxing again. Speaker Long, since something has happened to Special Assistant Yang, Rong Mingxing will be in an awkward position at the embassy here. She has been a great help to me, and she has stuck to her principles and bottom line in the face of major issues. I hope you can reconsider recruiting her into the Parliament Secretariat. I'd say she'd be a very promising Senate worker. Speaker Long didn't agree right away. He simply said, I will talk to her. Special Assistant Yang's case will definitely require Rong Mingxing's cooperation in the investigation. She was going to return to the Wuxia Empire with us anyway. Gu Nianji was relieved and said with a smile, Speaker Long, I trust you. I'll leave Rong Mingxing in your care. You child, you still have to take care of yourself. Why are you always thinking about others? Although he hadn't spent much time with Gu Nianji, Speaker Long already felt that Gu Nianji was actually a very sentimental and good girl. If others treated her well, she would want to return the favor 10 times over. Of course, if you did anything bad to her, she wouldn't relent. Speaker Long was very appreciative of his sincerity and persistence. He had been immersed in politics for so many years, and he knew that this kind of person was the most reassuring. He didn't have to worry that she wasn't capable enough and would cause trouble for him, nor did he have to worry that one day she would stab him in the back. Only people like this could be nurtured with peace of mind. After ending the call with Speaker Long, Gu Nianji felt that her face was burning. She put away her phone, touched her face and found that it was really warm. Hua Xiaoheng called out to her from the corridor, Nianji, come in after the call. Don't catch a cold at night. Gu Nianji turned around and smiled at him. Under the moonlight, her face was as bright as the epiphyllum under the moon, pale to the extreme and incomparably beautiful. Hua Xiaoheng's Adam's apple bobbed up and down as he suppressed the fire in his heart and waved for her to come over. Gu Nianji walked up the corridor on the steps and said with a smile, when will my suitcase arrive? I've already sent someone to pick it up. It should be soon. Hua Xiaoheng took her hand and brought it to his lips to kiss it. He said in a very low voice, I'll go to your room tonight? Gu Nianji smiled non-committally and didn't say a word. She gently pushed him away and turned to walk in. Hua Xiaoheng crossed his arms and looked at Gu Nianji's back. A smile flashed in his eyes. The little girl had really grown up. Not only had she grown up, but she also knew how to seduce people. The next morning, Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng woke up almost at the same time. Morning. The two looked at each other and ended a long morning kiss. We're going to visit a few clinics today. Which one do you want to visit first? Hua Xiaoheng got out of bed first to get dressed. He put on a pair of loose desert camouflage pants and a camouflage t-shirt to cover his strong, wheat-colored upper body. Gu Nianji hugged the blanket and sat up. Where's my suitcase? My clothes and things are all in there. Hua Xiaoheng picked up his phone and called his subordinate's number. Where did you put Miss Gu's suitcase? Boss, it's just outside Miss Gu's bedroom. Hua Xiaoheng turned off his phone and went out to open the door. He took Gu Nianji's suitcase inside and turned to leave. As soon as he closed the door, he saw He Zhichu standing at the door of the opposite room and looking at him coldly. Hua Xiaoheng was speechless. Professor He, did you sleep well? Hua Xiaoheng nodded slightly and greeted him as if nothing had happened. He Zhichu closed his eyes and said coldly, I heard you want Nianji to follow you? Not me, it's us. Hua Xiaoheng crossed his arms. Me, you, and our mercenary. He Zhichu looked at him expressionlessly and put his hands in his trouser pockets. His voice was even colder. What? Didn't we already catch Reinitz? What else do you want? The situation has changed. Hua Xiaoheng briefly explained the situation of the clinics that he had investigated yesterday. We're going to those clinics to see for ourselves today. He Zhichu heard that it had something to do with the angels in the world, charity again, and rubbed his brows in frustration. Are you guys done yet? The charity is about to be sued. When that happens, everything in the charity will belong to Nianji. Do you guys really have to go see them now? But this has something to do with Nianji's father. Hua Xiaoheng stared at He Zhichu and didn't miss his every move. He narrowed his eyes and said, Don't you want Nianji to find her father as soon as possible? He Zhichu became even more frustrated but didn't say anything. He only waved his hand. Up to you guys. He then turned and walked towards the stairs. Xiaoheng wasn't in a hurry to go down. Instead, he leaned against the wall by the door and waited for Gunyanji. After Gunyanji freshened up, she changed into a lake green lace cropped dress with 2 pockets on both sides. Gunyanji liked it the most. She opened the bedroom door and saw Xiaoheng leaning against the wall by the door. She was surprised. Xiao, you didn't go down? You should call me Alex. Xiaoheng reminded her. Don't let it slip in front of Reinitz. Alex was of course Xiaoheng's mercenary alias. It wasn't his real English name. He didn't have a real English name. Gunyanji nodded quickly and immediately corrected herself. Alex, do you want to go for breakfast? When are we leaving? They talked as they walked and arrived at the dining room on the first floor. The field personnel from the Special Operations Forces had already finished eating and were now working out in the gym. Hijichu sat alone in the dining room. Seeing the two of them walk in, Hijichu snapped his fingers and asked for the dishes to be served. He said, "You guys can make your own arrangements from now on. I won't interfere." Gunyanji sat across from Hijichu and said with a smile, "Professor He, we want to go to those clinics today. Won't you come with us?" Hijichu didn't even look up as he replied dryly, "No, I'm very busy." Xiaoheng sat down next to Gunyanji and smiled. "Nianji and I plan to pretend to be a husband and wife seeking a child and go to the clinics for consultation." Hijichu immediately looked up at him. His gaze was like lightning as he objected. "You and Nianji are pretending to be husband and wife? Absolutely not." This was the second watch of the day, chapter 1171, Pretending to be a husband and wife. It was the third watch of the day. A reminder for everyone's recommendation tickets. It was 8 o'clock in the evening. Mwah. Chapter 1179. Gunyanji also choked at Xiaoheng's description of pretending to be a husband and wife seeking children. She was drinking milk and when she heard this she choked and almost spat it out. Xiaoheng reached out and patted her back with a smile. "Drink slowly. No one's going to steal it from you." His voice and demeanor were gentle and considerate like never before. Gunyanji rolled her eyes at Xiaoheng. She was afraid someone would steal her milk. She clearly choked at his words. She was certain that Xiaoheng knew the reason but still deliberately twisted the truth. He was really evil. Hijichu gripped his knife and fork so tightly that the veins on the back of his hand popped out. The moment he heard Xiaoheng say husband and wife, he still lost control. He thought he could get over it and see her live a good life, but when he heard the word husband and wife, he realized it wasn't so easy to accept this reality. She was supposed to be his wife, but now she was smiling sweetly and being gentle with someone else. There was a knife above the word tolerance. If he really tolerated it, it would be like stabbing his heart with a knife. Hijichu took a deep breath and tried to speak as calmly as possible. "You're now the leader of the mercenaries around me. Do you think pretending to be husband and wife with Nianji won't expose your identity?" "I can disguise myself," Xiaoheng said nonchalantly. He stared at the half-foot-tall fish burger in front of him for a long time, then slowly picked it up with his hand and took a bite. "Also, if that clinic is as problematic as you said and is closely related to the Angels and the World Charity Foundation in Japan, then it must be under close surveillance. What identity do you plan to use if you just barge in like this?" Hijichu expressed his worry and quickly glanced at Xiaoheng and Gunyanji. Gunyanji's lake green lace dress and Xiaoheng's camouflage uniform looked eye-catching and piercing. Xiaoheng finished half of his fish burger and said slowly, "We must be pretending to be Japanese. I know a few words of their language." Gunyanji quickly shook her head. "Oh, but I don't understand. Why do we have to pretend to be Japanese? Can't we use our country's identity?" Xiaoheng looked at her meaningfully and said with a smile, "Trust me, pretending to be Japanese will have an unexpected effect." It seemed like there was a hidden meaning in his words. Gunyanji knew that Xiaoheng had more information than they did, so he must have his reasons for saying this. She kept quiet, which was a tacit agreement. Hijichu opened his mouth and swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. In the end, he decided not to get involved in their business. He said dryly, "Actually, that foundation spent so much money and worked for so many years without any results. I don't know why you guys spent so much effort to investigate. Is it fun to do something that has no result?" His voice was like a basin of cold water splashed over, cold and indifferent, like the tinkling sound of ice and jade colliding. Gunyanji frowned. "Professor, he has a point. Alex, are we taking them too seriously? Huo Xiaoheng shook his head. We won't know if it's serious until we see it. His gaze swept across Gunyanji's face. Just because I haven't succeeded now doesn't mean I haven't succeeded in the past. Also, as long as they keep doing it, there will be a day when they can solve the problem and achieve continuous success. We can't wait until that day to act. He still insisted on that point of view. For humans, technological progress was unstoppable. But for the country, key individuals were too important. Those outstanding disciplines relied heavily on leading scientists. Losing one could cause the country's advanced advantage to fall back at least 10 years, or even 50 years in serious cases. Gunyanji also felt that Huo Xiaoheng's words made sense. She said thoughtfully, I remember that the United States of America on the other side of the blue planet was able to send astronauts to the moon and back half a century ago. But now, they can't even launch a spacecraft to the moon again, let alone send astronauts to the moon and back again. If the moon landing was real and not faked, then it meant that the loss of technology was completely real. It was said that technological progress was irreversible, but technological development didn't progress in a straight line, but in a spiral. Then she thought about why the Gestapo, represented by Reinitz, was still tracking down a lost piece of data after half a century? Gunyanji suddenly felt enlightened. She nodded firmly. I have to go see it for myself. He Jichu was silent for a long time. I'll go with you. Huo Xiaoheng curled his lips in satisfaction. Professor He, you're not busy anymore? He Jichu had just used busy as an excuse to reject Gunyanji's suggestion. He Jichu snickered and scratched his knife twice on his plate. You make it sound so serious. Of course I have to make time to see it no matter how busy I am. Gunyanji was speechless. Huo Xiaoheng wanted to provoke He Jichu a few more times, but Gunyanji secretly kicked him under the table. She frowned at him and made a disapproving expression. Huo Xiaoheng glanced at her and raised his chin. He deliberately said, Why did you kick me? You want me to shut up? Fine, I'll shut up and won't argue with Professor He. Are you satisfied now? Gunyanji's little face flushed. She was extremely embarrassed, and her already large eyes widened even more. What was wrong with this person? He was deliberately arguing with her in front of others and provoking him in front of Professor He. He Jichu couldn't bear to listen anymore and threw his knife away. The knife fell on the half-empty plate, making a crisp clang. He said stiffly, Let me know when you're leaving. He left the dining room without looking back. Gunyanji turned around and watched He Jichu's lonely figure disappear at the entrance of the dining room. She felt a little sad. She didn't have romantic feelings for He Jichu, but that didn't mean she could take his feelings for granted and ignore it. When someone loved you with all his heart, even if you couldn't accept it, you couldn't treat it lightly. She felt that Huo Xiaoheng had gone too far and glared at him. She put down her knife and fork and got up to leave. Huo Xiaoheng sighed and quickly grabbed Gunyanji's wrist. He said quietly, Are you angry? Then I'll go apologize to Professor He. He only wanted to test how much He Jichu was hiding, but He Jichu was very indifferent to everything else. No matter how much he provoked him, it was useless. He only had an obsession with Gunyanji. They were both men, and Huo Xiaoheng didn't really believe that He Jichu had already let go of his feelings for Gunyanji. And this feeling seemed to be his only weakness. People in Huo Xiaoheng's line of work knew how to use weaknesses to provoke others to achieve their own goals. It was almost instinctive. Gunyanji didn't turn around and said dryly, Professor He has helped us enough. I hope you won't make things difficult for him anymore. Okay, I understand. Huo Xiaoheng nodded and let go. Gunyanji immediately took off. As soon as she walked out of the dining room, she saw that He Jichu hadn't gone far. He was leaning against the wall of the dining room door with his arms crossed and a faint smile on his face. Seeing her come out, his shimmering sultry eyes flashed. Nyenji, I'm very happy that you spoke up for me. Huo Xiaoheng's mouth twitched when he heard this from the dining room. This He Jichu had become so cunning. This was the third watch of the day, Chapter 1172, Speak Up for Me. It was the third watch of the day. A reminder for everyone's recommendation tickets. Moi. Chapter 1180. Gunyanji hadn't expected He Jichu to still be nearby. She blushed again and clasped her hands in front of her. She said awkwardly, Professor He, I meant what I said. You've helped me so much. I know. I'm glad you know. He Jichu patted her head and noticed that her hands were clasped together. He sighed softly and said quietly, You don't have to thank me. This is what I should do. Compared to what you've done for me, whatever I do for you is what I should do. Hijichu added silently in his heart. Gunyenji looked up and looked at Hijichu with a pair of bright inky eyes. Professor He, don't say that. We're not related and you've done so much for me. I really don't know how to repay you. How can you treat this as what you should do? Hijichu had risked his life to save Gunyenji several times when she was in danger. Hijichu's hand paused and moved it from Gunyenji's head. He smiled and looked down. Then work hard from now on and that'll count as repaying me. He knew Gunyenji didn't remember anything about her childhood. Hijichu thought to himself, it's okay if you don't remember as long as I remember. Gunyenji smiled. I'll definitely work hard. A great teacher produces great students. I won't ruin your reputation. Hijichu nodded. Go get changed. When are we leaving? Gunyenji looked at her watch. It's still early. We plan to go check around 10. She also had to discuss with Hua Xiaoheng what kind of husband and wife they should dress up as. Gunyenji didn't speak Japanese, so the problem hadn't been solved yet. Hijichu comforted her again. Don't be too nervous. Just treat it as going out to play. Don't be so worried. Whether it's related or not, it has nothing to do with you and me. He felt a bit uneasy seeing Gunyenji so invested in the Gu family's business. However, the Gu family was Gunyenji's support. She couldn't be someone without roots. And the Gu family was her best and most natural root. The two of them walked up the stairs together. Hua Xiaoheng sat in the dining room and looked at their backs. He slowly stood up and followed them out of the dining room. Hijichu and Gunyenji had just climbed the stairs to the second floor when his phone rang. He didn't want to answer at first, but when he heard the ringtone he took out his phone and looked at it. He decided to answer it anyway. Yenji, discuss it with Alex first. I'm going to take this call. Hijichu took the phone and walked to his room. As soon as he entered, he shut the door tightly, swiped open his phone and asked, "What's wrong? Why are you calling me?" The person on the other side of the phone sounded a little frightened. "Mr. He, it's like this. Someone said that he's a relative of yours from the countryside and wants to see you. He also said some nonsense things." Hijichu's brows furrowed slightly, and his voice was extremely cold. "What did she say? What relative? What's his name?" The place where the people were talking seemed to be very noisy. He covered his phone, found a quieter place and continued, "Mr. He, she said that your great-aunt." "Great-aunt? The He family had such a relative? Why didn't I know about it?" Hijichu asked unhappily. "Did you guys confirm her identity? I don't want any Tom, Dick, or Harry to call me a relative." It had only been 7 or 8 years since the He family's rise in power in South America. Hijichu was very sure that there were no relatives in the He family that he didn't know. However, since the He family had become rich, there were many people who wanted to take advantage of them. This was also human nature. However, pretending to be his great-aunt was a bit of a big deal. We asked and the general situation matched. She also said that when you were sick, you were recuperated at her house. Later, when you were 16, your father took you away from your hometown to treat your illness, and you never went back again. The person repeated the words of the great-aunt intermittently. She also said, the He family has a small population and now that she knows that you are still alive she is very happy. She just wants to meet you and see what you will look like when you grow up. Nothing else. Hijichu rubbed his forehead, feeling a headache coming on. Just show her my photo. Is that okay? The person seemed to be a bit hesitant. Your great-aunt is also Chinese. She said that she wants to go to the Huaxia Empire to return to her roots. Hijichu was speechless. Then give her a sum of money and let her live out her old age in peace. Hijichu was in no mood to be perfunctory with this kind of relatives who were separated by many generations. He knew very well that the He family's grandfather and grandmother didn't have any biological brothers, so how could there be a great-uncle and great-aunt? Of course, it was possible that it was a distant great-uncle and great-aunt. The He family had indeed been a large family in the past, but because of the hereditary disease in the family, it had been passed down from generation to generation, and almost all of them had died. Hijichu sighed with a complicated expression. In the future he would leave everything in the He family for Nyenji's children. He would never allow anyone from the He family to take a share. He had brought all the property, so he also had the right to take it away and leave it to anyone he wanted. The person asked Hijichu to wait for a moment and went to talk to the great-aunt. "Hello, our Mr. He just called back and said that he would show you this." The person was Hijichu's right-hand man in South America. He helped take care of all the South American businesses, and Hijichu trusted him very much. This person was also very capable and very loyal. He took out a recent photo of Hijichu from the photo album on his phone and showed it to the great aunt. The great aunt looked to be in her 60s or 70s, and the wrinkles on her face could squeeze mosquitoes to death. It was obvious that her living conditions were not very good. Her clothes were clean, but they looked like they had been washed many times and the colors had faded. She was very thin and shriveled, but her eyes were still very bright. She should be a very smart person. She was so old, but she didn't have any symptoms of dementia and still looked very smart. The great aunt took the phone from the person and glanced at it with a smile, then froze. Tears flowed uncontrollably, and she covered her mouth with her hand, crying and laughing at the same time. This is the beginning of our family. This is really the beginning of our family. So this is what our Jichu looks like when he grows up. He's not dead. He's still alive. I want to go fulfill my wish. I want to go. As she nagged, she tossed the man's phone away and ran out of Hijichu's mansion in South America without asking for anything. The person was stunned and quickly called a few people to follow her. He then called Hijichu and sent the video he had just secretly recorded to him. He said in confusion, "Mr. He, look, is this person mentally ill? She said she wanted to see you and she cried and laughed when she saw your photo. She didn't even want money." Hijichu received the video and only watched it for a moment before closing his eyes and letting out a long sigh. Yes, he survived and didn't die. How lucky. After a moment of silence, Hijichu called the person. "This is my great aunt. Find someone to take care of her and give her a house to live in. I don't need to tell you about her daily expenses, right?" I understand. The person nodded quickly. Since Hijichu had already recognized her as his relative and great aunt, he would naturally take good care of this old woman. After dealing with this unexpected matter, Hijichu finally got up to find a gray suit in the closet to change into. He was ready to go to the clinic with Gunyenji and the others. After Gunyenji returned to her room, she didn't change immediately. Instead, she waited for Hua Xiaoheng to come in to discuss. As soon as Hua Xiaoheng opened the door, he saw Gunyenji sitting on the sofa in the living room, playing with her phone. He knocked on the door. "Why aren't you going to change?" Gunyenji looked up and said calmly, "I didn't make it clear. How am I supposed to change?" "What do you want to say?" Hua Xiaoheng sat down beside her with a smile on his lips. "We're going to pretend to be husband and wife today to pray for a child? You said you were going to pretend to be from that country." Gunyenji pointed out the loophole in Hua Xiaoheng's words. "But I don't speak Japanese." "Okay, you don't need to speak. Just pretend you're mute. I'll do it." Hua Xiaoheng also patted her head. "Now go change into a simple dress. I'll find someone to do some makeup for you." Gunyenji was finally interested. "I have to do makeup?" "Of course. You won't go to that clinic with your real face, will you?" Hua Xiaoheng was amused. "There are surveillance cameras there. I'll definitely hack into their surveillance and erase our part." Gunyenji made a peace sign. Fine. You're a hacker, so you have the final say." Hua Xiaoheng teased her with a half smile. "Go change. I'll call someone up to do makeup for you." Gunyenji was happy. She excitedly went to the suitcase in the bedroom and found a moon-white dress suit. It was a very standard style and a waist-length jacket. She looked like a housewife in Tokyo's wealthy district. The person Hua Xiaoheng found to do makeup for Gunyenji was an expert in the Special Operations Forces. He brought a small makeup kit and finished Gunyenji's makeup in no time. "Look in the mirror and see if you're satisfied." The person smiled and clapped his hands. Gunyenji opened her eyes and saw a fair, pretty face in the mirror. There was only a little lipstick in the middle of her lips. Her eyebrows were thinly drawn, which made her eyes look extraordinarily large. Gunyenji pouted in disgust. "This looks so ugly. I'll be fine if I wear sunglasses. Miss Gu's eyes are too big, so it's not easy to draw." The person smiled as he took out a pair of sunglasses and put them on Gunyenji. She immediately felt much better. Hua Xiaoheng also put on sunglasses and wore a well-fitting suit. His face had been modified to have a fake aquiline nose. He didn't have a full beard and his cheeks were clean-shaven. No one would be able to tell that it was Hua Xiaoheng if they looked closely. After all, Hua Xiaoheng was too good-looking and good-looking. Most people wouldn't be able to easily confuse him with someone else. Even if they thought his figure was similar, they would immediately deny that possibility when they saw his face. "Let's go. We'll find a clinic to pray for children." Hua Xiaoheng smiled and extended his arm to Gunyenji. Gunyenji put the glove on his arm and said gently, "Hi." This was the first night watch for the day. Chapter 1173, I Want to Fulfill a Wish. Today was the start of the double monthly vote. Everyone can cast their monthly votes now. The second night watch at 1 p.m. and the third night watch at 8 p.m. Do you still need the fourth night watch? If you do, then hurry up and cast your monthly votes. Moi. Chapter 1181. It's been a long time since I've asked for monthly votes with a single chapter. Today I'm doing it again. This single chapter is free of charge. It won't be counted. Dear friends, the double monthly votes have already begun. Hurry up and vote. If you still have monthly votes, if you haven't voted for the full 5, can you vote for the Major General? Please vote for monthly votes X2. Please vote for monthly votes X2. Please vote for monthly votes X2. If you don't have monthly votes anymore, recommendation votes will do. P.S. Today's second night watch is at 1 p.m., and the third night watch is at 8 p.m. It's very likely that the fourth night watch will drop at 10 p.m. Chapter 1182. Wu Xiaoheng and Gu Nianji, disguised as a Japanese couple, got into the car and sat in the back. Wu Xiaoheng's subordinates drove a normal black BMW 7 Series, and He Zhichu sat in the passenger seat, pretending to be their assistant. In the car, Gu Nianji took out the information she had found and gave a brief introduction to the people in the car. My father's note listed the names of 4 clinics. They are Batty's Fertility Assistance Center, Labadoo Project's Parental Treatment Center, Das Fertility Medical Clinic, and Leijiawan Infertility Treatment Center. Last night, I accessed their financial systems and discovered that out of the 4 clinics, Batty's Fertility Assistance Center is the largest, but the charity funding it receives is average. Labadoo Project's Parental Treatment Center is the second largest and receives more funding than Batty's, but less than the other 2. Leijiawan Infertility Treatment Center is the smallest and receives the least funding. Das Fertility Medical Clinic ranks 3rd out of the 4 clinics in terms of size and effectiveness, which is the second last. However, it receives the most donations from the Angels in the World Foundation. Its clinic alone accounts for 2/3 of the foundation's funding. That's why we're going to Das Fertility Medical Clinic today. We would like to see how it received the most donations from the foundation with a scale that was neither good nor bad. Gu Nianji sent the information she had found to He Zhichu and Wu Xiaoheng's phones. You can look at it again to see if I missed anything. Wu Xiaoheng didn't even take out his phone. He replied calmly, I believe you. You don't have to look anymore. He Zhichu had already taken out his phone, but when he heard Wu Xiaoheng's words, he cursed Wu Xiaoheng for being despicable. He put his phone back without batting an eyelid. He replied coolly, I'm not interested in this clinic. I'm just worried about your safety. He indicated that he wanted to go with them, not to see if there was anything fishy about the clinic, but to ensure Gu Nianji's safety. Gu Nianji nodded quickly. Yes, I know, Professor, he is doing this for my own good. He Zhichu turned around and smiled at her. His shimmering almond-shaped eyes sparkled and he looked very attractive. Wu Xiaoheng pursed his lips and pressed Gu Nianji's head against his shoulder. He said dryly, go to sleep. You were tired last night. Aren't you sleepy? Gu Nianji looked at Wu Xiaoheng in shock. I slept last night? How could I? No. Wu Xiaoheng looked at her with a half smile and leaned over. His last word was deep and magnetic. Gu Nianji, who was attracted to his voice, couldn't help blushing. She shifted back and stammered. No, nothing. Then he closed his eyes and tried to hide something. I'm sleepy. I want to sleep for a while. She wanted to stop Wu Xiaoheng from saying those things in front of He Zhichu, but it was exactly what Wu Xiaoheng wanted. He wrapped an arm around Gu Nianji's back and pulled her into his arms. He said quietly, go to sleep. I'll wake you when it's time. Gu Nianji quickly closed her eyes. Out of sight, out of mind. He Zhichu's gaze instantly became very sharp. He glared at Wu Xiaoheng coldly before turning his head to look ahead. He didn't say anything else. They didn't speak until they arrived at the parking lot of the Das Fertility Medical Clinic. Wu Xiaoheng nudged Gu Nianji awake. We're here. Gu Nianji rubbed her eyes and put on her sunglasses. She smiled. From now on, I'm a mute. He Zhichu also put on his sunglasses but didn't get out of the car. He waved the phone in his hand at Gu Nianji. Your sunglasses have a built-in pinhole camera. I've already connected it to my phone. I'll be able to see everything you guys see. Gu Nianji pushed the sunglasses up the bridge of her nose and nodded with a smile. She took Wu Xiaoheng's arm and walked to the clinic's entrance. The clinic was a very typical local building. It was square and flat, and liked to use gray marble for the exterior walls. It looked clean and rustic. It was more upscale than the rundown slums and had a more humanistic feel than the nouveau riche rich area. There was a green lawn in front of the clinic. The South Asian early summer sun shone on the grass, and it was full of vitality. Gunyanji took Hua Xiaoheng's arm and maintained a gentle smile as they crossed the lawn. As they walked, she gritted her teeth and whispered to Hua Xiaoheng, "What did you mean by being in the car today?" "I meant it literally." Hua Xiaoheng still smiled calmly and walked forward with elegant steps. His words were not elegant at all. "Mrs. Hua, you better only have eyes for Mr. Hua. If there's anyone else, Mr. Hua will be very angry." "When did I have eyes for anyone else?" Gunyanji muttered unhappily. "Don't always target Professor He. He's wholeheartedly helping us, but you're still targeting him. Aren't you going to disappoint him? Do you really want to force Professor He to be our enemy? Do you know how powerful he is?" The smile on Hua Xiaoheng's face gradually faded. After a moment of silence, he said, "If he has to be on our side at the cost of you, I'd rather be his enemy." Gunyanji was speechless. She probably wasn't very satisfied with this answer, but what was with the little joy that rose in her heart? She rarely heard traditional romantic words from Hua Xiaoheng, but she wanted to hear more from him like today. Gunyanji pinched Hua Xiaoheng's arm and encouraged him. "What else?" She looked at him with wide eyes, waiting for him to feed her a mouth full of affection. Hua Xiaoheng didn't need to look to know what Gunyanji's expression was. He didn't turn around and said calmly, "Don't push your luck." Gunyanji was speechless. The two of them joked along the way and finally arrived at the entrance of the Das clinic. They quickly noticed that the patients seemed to be divided into two groups. One group was Caucasians from Europe and the United States. The men were tall and handsome, and the women were beautiful and enchanting. The other group looked to be Asian and were probably natives from Japan. The men and women were all very short and unpresentable. They looked like God had carelessly molded them out of dough. Their facial features were so flat that they could almost disappear with a swipe of the hand. These two groups of people made up the majority. Asian couples like Hua Xiaoheng and Gunyanji, who were both tall and handsome, were relatively rare. So as soon as they entered, the eyes of the medical staff in white coats immediately lit up. They exchanged a knowing look, and a middle-aged Asian woman at the front desk of the clinic took the initiative to walk over and greeted them with a smile. "Hello, how may I be of service?" She actually spoke Chinese, but it was a bit stiff, so they could tell she wasn't from the Huaxia Empire. Hua Xiaoheng and Gunyanji didn't know if she could tell they were from the Huaxia Empire, but their plan wouldn't change because of a greeting. Hua Xiaoheng made a surprised expression and bowed. He said in Japanese, "Hello, hello." Translation, "Nice to meet you for the first time, please take care of me." "Oh, you're not from the Huaxia Empire?" The middle-aged Asian woman was surprised and delighted. Her attitude toward them became even more friendly. She bowed deeply to them and blurted out in pure Japanese, "Welcome, please come in, please come in." This is today's second update, Chapter 1174, The Price of Being His Enemy. Today is the start of the double monthly vote. Everyone can cast their monthly votes now. 8 p.m. the third update. Do you still need the fourth update to drop at 10 p.m.? If you do, hurry up and cast your monthly votes. P.S. Thank you to the leader, I am Master Rashi, for tipping 100,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Thank you to Meow Little Meow for tipping 60,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Congratulations to Meow Little Meow for becoming the 24th leader of Hello Major General. Moi. Chapter 1183. Hua Xiaoheng took out the props he had prepared, 2 Japanese passports, and waved them at the middle-aged woman. He introduced his purpose in Japanese. The middle-aged woman kept bowing. "Okay, please follow me. You're a VIP, so you don't have to squeeze with these people." Hua Xiaoheng and Gunyanji smiled as they followed the middle-aged woman to the clinic's VIP room. It had to be said that the clinic's VIP room was decorated to be worthy of the word VIP. The floor was made of natural red cherry wood. The texture was exquisite and the material was tight. It was obvious that it was expensive. The floor-to-ceiling windows were hung with blue and white striped curtains. The curtains were made of an unknown material, but they were as smooth and glossy as flowing water. In the middle of the room were a few chairs custom-made according to ergonomics, and there was a circle of ash-gray corner sofas. On the coffee table in the middle was a pot of hydrangea in full bloom. There was also a small golden Buddha statue placed next to the hydrangea. On the wall facing the door of the VIP room, there was a framed English poem. The elegance of the cursive made the words look like a medieval painting. A little girl needs daddy for many things. Like giving her thello fatischer sien der sadiving deeper soaring high she'll always find him there. Because he can do many things, because he could do many things. For example, give her a lot of love, that's her ocean and air. So as long as she dives into the deep sea or flies high in the sky, she'll find him there. Gunyenji's eyes narrowed. This was also the poem on her father's note. Why would it appear here? Of course, from the clinic's point of view, this was a children's poem about fatherly love. It was perfect for a clinic that treated infertility. Hua Xiaoheng also saw the poem and quickly patted Gunyenji's hand calmly so that she wouldn't reveal anything. The sunglasses on their faces hid the changes in their expressions. The middle-aged woman invited Gunyenji and Hua Xiaoheng to sit down and personally brought them platters of pastries and snacks. There was also freshly squeezed juice, cappuccinos, and 2 cups of tea for them to choose from. Neither Gunyenji nor Hua Xiaoheng would eat something they didn't know had come from outside, so they only politely expressed their gratitude for the food the middle-aged woman had set out. They had no intention of eating it. The middle-aged woman did not force them to eat. She was very respectful to them. She took out a small medical tablet and patiently asked them about their situation. How long have the 2 of you been married? Have you never gotten pregnant? She looked at Gunyenji curiously. Gunyenji was speechless. Hua Xiaoheng said from the side, my wife has hearing problems. She's deaf and mute. She can only understand sign language and lip language. The middle-aged woman revealed an expression of sudden realization, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. She nodded and said eagerly, so that's how it is. I understand now. Are the 2 of you worried that the child will also have hearing problems in the future, so you've always been unwilling to have children? If that's the case, you've made the right choice to come to our clinic. Gunyenji was speechless. Not at all. I just don't want to talk to you. Gunyenji kept cursing in her heart. She really admired this woman with the potential of a salesperson. She could even talk to herself without stopping. However, Hua Xiaoheng pretended to listen attentively and occasionally asked at the right time, my wife's hearing is natural. If the child will also have hearing problems, I'll accept it. But from what you said, your clinic seems to be able to help us solve this problem? Of course. The middle-aged woman was very proud. I can say that on the entire blue planet, only our clinic will provide you with this kind of service. You won't find this kind of tailor-made baby anywhere else. Gunyenji was speechless. *CK, you're so capable that you can tailor-make a baby? Why don't you say you're God and know how to make a human out of clay? Hua Xiaoheng was obviously also very surprised. He let out a long oh. The pleasant subwoofer almost made Gunyenji's ears drunk. The middle-aged woman also blushed. She had been chattering non-stop just now, but when she heard Hua Xiaoheng's oh, she couldn't help but pause before continuing. You and your wife, please believe me. We have first-class reproductive experts here to help you select germ cells for fusion. We will also cultivate a few more pairs of fertilized eggs and then select the healthiest fertilized eggs to implant in your uterus. You don't have to worry about multiple births. Of course, if you want multiple births, we can also help. Gunyenji wore sunglasses and smiled slightly. After listening for a long time, she finally understood a little. This clinic should be doing artificial insemination. As for the first-class reproductive experts screening germ cells to produce fertilized eggs, it was probably just a gimmick. Gunyenji didn't believe a word of it. But how could a normal artificial insemination clinic receive so much funding from a charity like Angels on Earth? Gunyenji didn't think it made sense. Hua Xiaoheng probably thought the same. He said in a low voice, you do artificial insemination and can even select fertilized eggs? From what I know, normal artificial insemination can't actually do that. You don't know this. Others might not be able to do it, but we can definitely do it. The middle-aged woman probably saw that Hua Xiaoheng and Gunyenji were also Japanese, so she explained it to them in more detail than others. We are compatriots. I won't cheat you, she said passionately and held Gunyenji's hand. For tall, beautiful and outstanding people like you, we will strongly support you to have more offspring. Gunyenji was speechless. She felt like something was wrong. The middle-aged woman's passion made Gunyenji feel like she was shouldering the heavy responsibility of improving her race. Hua Xiaoheng protected Gunyenji with one hand and pulled her hand away from the woman's. He said unhappily, my wife doesn't like people touching her. Oh, I'm sorry. The middle-aged woman apologized profusely. After getting up and bowing, she brought over a very high-end DSLR camera and said with a smile, Since the two of you are here for treatment, do you mind if I take a couple of photos for archiving? Gu Nianji hid behind Hua Xiaoheng, and Hua Xiaoheng also used his hand to block the camera lens. He frowned. No need. Is this how you protect patients' privacy? The middle-aged woman blushed at Hua Xiaoheng's words. She put away the camera awkwardly and said, I'm sorry. I saw that you were really beautiful, so I wanted to take a souvenir. Gu Nianji frowned and tugged at Hua Xiaoheng's shirt to indicate that she wanted to leave. She felt a chill run down her spine. It felt like many people were examining her and Hua Xiaoheng like they were looking at merchandise. Hua Xiaoheng also felt this strange feeling. However, Hua Xiaoheng's intuition was developed from going through life and death situations many times. It was acquired. Gu Nianji, on the other hand, was purely born intuition. Hua Xiaoheng held Gu Nianji's hand and said to the middle-aged woman, Thank you for your hospitality. We need to think about it carefully. There are still 4 or 5 clinics. We still need to do some field research before we can decide which clinic for the surgery. You still want to go to other clinics? The middle-aged woman was a bit anxious. Other clinics are actually not as good as ours. You don't need to go to other places to waste time. We are doing this for our child, so of course we need to be more cautious. Hua Xiaoheng said politely and put an arm around Gu Nianji's waist. We'll be leaving today. Hey, wait a minute. The middle-aged woman also seemed to be wearing earphones or a Bluetooth headset. She was obviously listening attentively before calling out to Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng stopped in his tracks and asked unhappily, Is there anything else? The middle-aged woman was all smiles. Congratulations on winning the prize. Our experts are very interested in your case and are willing to perform the surgery for free. They will also guarantee that the fertilized egg will implant and that you will give birth to a healthy and beautiful baby. After the baby is born, we can also give him a year's worth of milk powder subsidies. Are you willing to do this? If you are, you can sign a contract with our clinic. Gu Nianji resisted the urge to exchange glances with Hua Xiaoheng and only looked straight ahead. Because she was currently pretending to be a deaf and mute, although she could read lips, it was still not suitable for her to reveal too obvious an expression. Also, she secretly thought that the experts here were so strange. They actually paid for the surgery for patients. Did this come from the funds subsidized by the Angels on Earth Charity Foundation? Speaking of which, what standards did they use to measure it? Gu Nianji thought about it jokingly. If the other party didn't see through her and Hua Xiaoheng's disguise, then there should only be one reasonable standard: looks? This was the 3rd update of the day, Chapter 1175, Looks. Today was the start of the double monthly vote. Everyone can cast their monthly votes now. Do you still want the 4th update to drop at 10 p.m.? Hurry up and cast your monthly votes. Mwah. Chapter 1184. Gu Nianji secretly came to this conclusion. It was like finding joy in the midst of suffering. There seemed to be a bullet screen in her mind that was rapidly flashing by the words, looks. She wanted to laugh at herself. Hua Xiaoheng seemed to have the same thought as her and asked, Why are you giving us such good conditions? Our cases aren't special, right? Since they came to the infertility treatment center to pray for children, everyone here should be couples who had problems with natural conception. Among these people, Hua Xiaoheng and Gu Nianji's fake symptoms were definitely the most common kind. There was no medical representation at all. The middle-aged woman didn't expect the couple to be so cautious that they wouldn't even take advantage of such a good deal, but she quickly remembered that they were of the same race and culture, so they were naturally more virtuous than the Huaxia citizens next door who always called themselves the Celestial Empire. They wouldn't want to take advantage of everything. She became even more respectful to Hua Xiaoheng and Gu Nianji. Crossing her hands in front of her, she bowed deeply. You two are exceptionally talented. Such good genes should be passed down. Our experts are committed to endorsing the best genes. Gu Nianji's vision almost went black when she heard this. Damn, they were really looking at looks. They were giving such good conditions because they saw that she and Hua Xiaoheng had good physical conditions. Hua Xiaoheng didn't speak for a long time. She didn't know if it was because he was stunned or because of other reasons. Gu Nianji stood behind Hua Xiaoheng and couldn't see his expression. Hua Xiaoheng's heart was beating faster than ever at that moment. He never would have thought that the clinic's purpose would be like this. It was almost identical to history. If all these clinics were like this, then they could basically confirm what kind of data Reinitz and the others were pursuing, right? Hua Xiaoheng's gaze instantly became incomparably deep. Fortunately, it was hidden behind his sunglasses, so the extremely attentive clinic receptionist in front of him couldn't see it. Of course, we will also test your intelligence to determine the baseline of your child's IQ. Then we will help you optimize your reproductive cells to give birth to the smartest babies. Who knows, they might be top students in the future. Really? The middle-aged woman covered her mouth and giggled. Hua Xiaoheng's expression and voice didn't change. He was still polite and aloof. Thank you for your hospitality, but we would still like to visit another clinic. Money isn't a problem for us. Goodbye. Gu Nianji stood behind Hua Xiaoheng and quietly took out her phone to take a picture of the framed English poem on the wall. Little girl needs daddy took a few pictures with the highest resolution possible. Of course, the pinhole camera on her sunglasses was also aimed at the handwritten English poem from all angles. Meanwhile, Hua Xiaoheng was still negotiating with the middle-aged woman. He insisted on not considering the clinic's preferential conditions, and insisted on leaving. The middle-aged woman was helpless. She saw that the couple had an extraordinary aura and didn't seem like ordinary people. She didn't dare to use any other methods and could only watch them leave the clinic and head to the parking lot. Jiazi, forget it. Don't force them if they don't want to, someone said to the middle-aged woman through the Bluetooth headset. The receptionist nodded regretfully and said, Yes, Sir Director. Yoshiko is just regretful. This couple's physical conditions are so good, and they are Japanese. Their reproductive cells should be of great help to us. Their conditions are not the best. Let's just let them go. There were tens of thousands of people who came to their clinic. In the director's opinion, although the couple had good figures, their looks weren't particularly outstanding, so the director didn't care. Hua Xiaoheng and Gu Nianji's disguised appearances couldn't compare to their original appearances, so it was normal for them to be dissed. If the other party really didn't give up despite their disguises, then it wasn't because of their looks, but because they discovered their disguises. Then they had to run even more. Hua Xiaoheng and Gu Nianji got into the car from the parking lot and didn't speak at first. The car drove out of the clinic's parking lot and onto the main street. The situation on the streets was still not optimistic. There were long queues of people exchanging money everywhere. Every bank was in a mess and people were crowding around. Gu Nianji finally let out a long sigh and smiled. I can speak now, right? I'm dying of suffocation. Hua Xiaoheng passed her a bottle of water. Are you thirsty? They hadn't touched a drop of water at the clinic. Gu Nianji accepted the water and drank half the bottle in one go. I didn't expect this clinic to favor patients with good physical conditions. Gu Nianji looked down and closed the bottle cap. She shook her head. It's just artificial insemination. Does it think it's God or something? He Jichu didn't even turn around. He said dryly, I said there's nothing to check. You guys have to go. Hua Xiaoheng put one hand on the back of the seat behind Gu Nianji and the other hand on the edge of the window. He said thoughtfully, at least we confirmed their important criteria for accepting patients. Speaking of which, they can't wait to give all kinds of discounts when they see people with good physical conditions. They're even willing to do free surgeries. Do you think there's anything fishy about this kind of free lunch? Gu Nianji thought about it and leaned back in the seat. From He Jichu's perspective, it looked like Gu Nianji was resting on Hua Xiaoheng's arm. This kind of scene in broad daylight was really unbearable to the eyes. He Jichu pushed up the rearview mirror in front of him. He didn't want to see what was happening behind him. I've always believed that there's no such thing as a free lunch. Of course there's no such thing as free lunch. Gu Nianji crossed her arms in front of her chest. Her expression was very serious. So they must be able to benefit more from this kind of thing. That's why they made such an offer that normal patients can't refuse. Artificial insemination wasn't cheap. If it was a good clinic, they could do some gender selection so it would be even more expensive. And hearing from the clinic's receptionist, their experts could also optimize the selection and cultivation of reproductive cells. That was amazing. Hua Xiaoheng nodded. Yes, there must be more benefits. That's why the Angels in the World Charity Foundation spent so much effort to support these clinics. One more thing. He Jichu added from the front. Have you thought about why they set up the clinic here? Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng looked at each other, then looked away. Hua Xiaoheng said thoughtfully, because there are a lot of people here? Other than the Huaxia Empire, the country with the Taj Mahal was the most populous country on the entire blue planet. Perhaps the current population had already surpassed the Huaxia Empire and became the most populous country on the blue planet. Gu Nianji followed He Jichu's train of thought. There's a lot of population, so there's a lot of variation in genetics? The main ethnic group in this country is still Caucasians, Hua Xiaoheng added calmly. Hua Xiaoheng added calmly, But the patients we saw today were mostly of two types, Caucasians and Japanese. Gunyenji nodded. That's true. But we'll have to see a few more clinics for the specific conclusion. As Hua Xiaoheng spoke, he directed the driver to drive to another infertility clinic, the Batty Fertility Assistance Center. Batty was the largest of the 4 clinics and had the best results. However, the assistance it received was only average, so it was only ranked 3rd out of the 4 clinics. Gunyenji and Hua Xiaoheng entered the clinic dressed the same as before. The people seeking treatment here were much more normal, and most of them were locals. It was chaotic and noisy everywhere. Occasionally, there would be people of higher castes coming out from the VIP rooms inside. One look and you could tell that they were much fairer than most of the people here. Gunyenji and Hua Xiaoheng waited for half an hour before they were called in. This is today's 4th update, Chapter 1176, It Really Depends on Looks. Today is the start of the double monthly vote. Everyone can cast your monthly votes now. Everyone, your monthly votes today are too awesome. Here's the 4th update. Hurry up and cast your monthly votes. Good night, sweethearts. Chapter 1185. The people at this clinic didn't treat Gunyenji and Hua Xiaoheng as special as the people at Das Clinic, but it was still better than other patients. The difference in treatment between the two of them could be seen. Gunyenji and Hua Xiaoheng were already mentally prepared for the treatment at Das Clinic. They were calm as they calmly followed a local nurse into a reception room. Please wait, the doctor will see you soon. The nurse was a local and spoke in English. Hua Xiaoheng thought about it and asked directly, Can you? You speak Japanese? Do you speak Japanese? But she thought about it. I can get a Japanese doctor to see you. That would be great. Hua Xiaoheng nodded in agreement. Gunyenji continued to smile at them and nodded at the nurse. The Bluetooth headset in her ear activated an instant translation program. The words she could hear could be instantly translated into Mandarin or English. Although it wasn't as accurate as a real person's simultaneous translation, it could allow people to understand the general meaning of the other party's words. Although it wasn't as accurate as a real person's simultaneous translation, it could allow people to understand the general meaning of the other party's words. This was how Gunyenji had understood the Japanese-speaking middle-aged woman at Das Clinic earlier. The nurse quickly left the small reception room. After a while, a Japanese male doctor with a medium build and a mustache wearing a white lab coat walked in with 2 Japanese nurses with thin eyebrows and small mouths. He greeted Hua Xiaoheng and Gunyenji in Japanese as soon as he entered. Of course, Hua Xiaoheng repeated what he had said at Das's clinic, word for word. The male doctor stared at Gunyenji for a while before asking Hua Xiaoheng, Can you ask your wife to take off her sunglasses? Hua Xiaoheng raised a brow. What? My wife is a bit shy and isn't used to interacting with strangers. This time, her psychiatrist specifically told me to let her wear sunglasses at all times, so that she can feel safe and not be anxious. Hua Xiaoheng even brought up the psychiatrist, so the Japanese doctor couldn't continue asking Gunyenji to take off her sunglasses. He turned to look at Hua Xiaoheng. What about you? The psychiatrist also told you to wear sunglasses? He hoped Hua Xiaoheng would take them off. Hua Xiaoheng shook his head. It's just a personal habit of mine. I've injured my eyes before, so I have weak vision. My eyes hurt whenever I'm under the sun. Hua Xiaoheng said it so eloquently that even Gunyenji almost believed him. The Japanese male doctor became excited and pointed at Gunyenji. She is your wife, but she was born deaf and mute. She's your wife, but her eyes are injured and she's blind. She's Gunyenji. She doesn't meet the requirements for genetic enhancement. You can't give birth to healthy children. Hua Xiaoheng was very unhappy. His face immediately darkened as he said unhappily, What are you talking about? Gunyenji Yang said. I'm sorry, you're making me very uncomfortable. I have to leave now. I don't want to seek treatment in an environment that disrespects patients. With that, he took Gunyenji's hand and walked out. I'm sorry, you're making me very uncomfortable. I have to go. I don't want to see a patient in an environment that doesn't respect patients. Your patients, he said in a strange tone. Your patients? You came to see me, so you have to listen to me. How can you be like this? Why do you need a doctor if everyone is like you? Go back to where you came from. The male doctor thought that as long as he scared the 2 patients, they would listen to him obediently. He didn't expect Hua Xiaoheng to completely ignore him. He pushed the sunglasses on his face with his hand and turned to Gunyenji. He said gently in Japanese, Let's go home. Gunyenji listened to the translation in her Bluetooth headset and nodded. She put her hand on Hua Xiaoheng's arm. The two of them walked out of Batty's clinic. It was the first time the Japanese doctor had met a patient who was more arrogant than a doctor, and his expression darkened. Don't come to me for patients like this in the future. I'm very busy. He raked his fingers through his hair and turned to leave the small reception room. When he reached the door, he kicked it hard to vent his anger. Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng returned to the car. He Jichu smirked and looked at his watch mockingly. Aside from the 30 minutes you had to wait, you didn't even get to meet the doctor for 5 minutes and you're leaving in defeat? I told you many times these places are despicable. It's fine if you don't go. Gu Nianji was also angry. Her brows furrowed and she said with dissatisfaction, "What's wrong with their attitude? I've never seen such arrogant doctors even at the world's best Johns Hopkins hospital. Not only did they not respect their patients, but they also didn't treat them as human beings. They were bossy and treated their patients like slaves." Hua Xiaoheng leaned against the back seat and ordered the driver to drive. He said nonchalantly, "It looks like they're very confident in their research and technology. That's why they're so fearless." Confident? Ah. He Jichu laughed without saying anything. Gu Nianji rolled her eyes and leaned forward on the back of He Jichu's seat. She asked with a smile, "Professor He, do you know what's going on with them? If you do, can you tell us? Even if it's just a little bit?" He Jichu turned to look at her and shrugged. "I really don't know what these people are doing. But I know that technological progress shouldn't be done this way. They will never be able to make any real progress in technology if they use this method." Gu Nianji blinked her large, dark eyes and tried to digest He Jichu's words. She thought about it for a while and asked in confusion, "You mean they're actually doing scientific research?" "Research? Maybe. Science? Not necessarily." He Jichu continued to maintain his arrogant, mocking demeanor. "Look at how long they've been working, but have they ever achieved any results? That idiot doctor with the Rendan beard acted like he knew the truth of the universe, but I bet he doesn't even know how many base pairs there are in the human genome." Gu Nianji's eyes widened, and her face was full of admiration. "Professor He, do you know how many base pairs there are in the human genome? But what is a base pair?" Gu Nianji's face was full of question marks, and she was full of curiosity. He Jichu pursed his lips and was a bit annoyed. Hua Xiaoheng watched from the side and said calmly, "Nianji, Professor He is a law student. How would he know about the base pairs in the human genome? If you want to know, you can search it online. It'll be faster." "Really? I forgot that Professor He is a law student." Gu Nianji turned to smile at Hua Xiaoheng sweetly and took out her phone to search for information. The two of them echoed each other and tried to provoke He Jichu into talking more. But this time, no matter how much they provoked him, he didn't speak again. It was almost noon by the time they left the Batty clinic. Hua Xiaoheng looked at the information they had gathered and discussed with Gu Nianji and He Jichu. "There are 2 more clinics. Should we check them out?" Gu Nianji first glanced at He Jichu and saw that he was completely uninvolved. She boldly suggested, "Why don't we go back? I think the business scope and model of these clinics are similar. We've already checked out 2, and the other 2 don't have any representative value. It's fine if we don't check them out. Also, they might arouse suspicion if they showed up at all 4 clinics. They only went to the 2 more representative clinics, and they had a public conflict with the Japanese male doctor at the Batty clinic, so it made sense why they didn't go to those clinics anymore. They didn't want to alert the enemy and make them feel that their appearance and disappearance were too sudden." Hua Xiaoheng nodded calmly. "That's exactly what I was thinking." The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Their hearts were in sync. He Jichu silently clenched his fists and closed his eyes. Out of sight, out of mind. The 4 of them returned to He Jichu's apartment in the wealthy district of New Delhi in the afternoon. The sun in South Asia was already as hot as summer. Gu Nianji got out of the air-conditioned car and walked the short distance to the steps of the mansion. She was already drenched in sweat. She fanned herself in front of her and muttered, "It's only the beginning of summer and it's already so hot. Won't people die from the heat in summer?" Many people die from the heat in New Delhi and Mumbai every year. This isn't news. He Jichu turned around and said dryly, "Hurry inside. There's air conditioning in the house." As soon as they stepped into the central air-conditioned mansion, a gust of cold air hit them in the face. Gu Nianji took a deep breath and walked to the kitchen to pour herself a glass of ice water. Then she took out a Häagen-Dazs raisin ice cream from the fridge and ate it as she walked. On the way back, Hua Xiaoheng had already read through all the information they had and made a simple analysis. He said to Gu Nianji, "I already have some ideas. Do you want to hear my analysis? Gunyenji nodded repeatedly. That's exactly what I wanted. She saw Hijichu quietly standing to the side with his head lowered and eyes sad. She couldn't bear to see him like that, so she wanted to find something for him to do so he wouldn't let his imagination run wild. She asked casually, "Can Professor He analyze it with us?" Xiaoheng glanced at Hijichu and smiled. "If Professor He is willing, it's not impossible." Hijichu didn't want to hear it at first. These things had nothing to do with him and he didn't want to pay attention at all. But these things were what Gunyenji cared about. For her sake he had to focus on it. Hijichu nodded indifferently. "If Alex doesn't mind, I can sit in and listen." Xiaoheng looked at his watch. "Let's have lunch first, then borrow Professor He's study. Also bring Reinitz in. I also have something to ask him." This was the first update of the day, Chapter 1177, Out of Sight, Clean Heart. Today was the second day of double monthly votes. Everyone please continue to vote. Second update at 1 p.m., third update at 8 p.m. P.S. Thank you to Little Chijio, Spicy Candy, and Sing_Sing, for each tipping 10,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Mwah. Chapter 1186. Gunyenji was nervous when she heard that Reinitz was going to be brought over. She asked Xiaoheng hesitantly, "Alex, what identity will you use to meet him?" Xiaoheng hadn't used his real identity in front of Reinitz ever since he arrived. Xiaoheng thought about it for a moment. "This time, it has something to do with him, so I might as well use my real identity." "It has something to do with him?" Gunyenji was shocked. "He used to work for that foundation for a few years, but he said he was there to look for my father's manuscripts and letters as well as the whereabouts of the data. How would these clinics have anything to do with him?" Xiaoheng glanced at her and smiled. "Don't worry, you'll find out in a bit." Gunyenji relaxed when she saw Xiaoheng's confidence. She returned to her room to wash off her makeup and change into a simple t-shirt and short skirt. Hijichu met her at the staircase and asked casually, "Don't you think Xiao seems to know more about this?" Gunyenji nodded and replied without hesitation, "What does Xiao do? It's only natural that he knows more than us. If Xiao knew less than them, then there was something wrong with his job." Although Gunyenji was already very relieved about Xiaoheng's feelings, she was even more relieved about Xiaoheng's job. She might suspect that Xiaoheng sometimes didn't care enough about her and didn't take her seriously, but she would never doubt the importance Xiaoheng attached to his job. Xiaoheng happened to be walking around the corner with an ultra-thin laptop. A faint smile flashed across his eyes when he heard Gunyenji's words. "Nianji, Professor He, this way." Xiaoheng pushed open the door to the study. His subordinates from the Special Operations Forces had already thoroughly checked the place. They had eliminated pinhole cameras, invisible recording devices, and all kinds of monitoring devices. They had also set up anti-monitoring devices to make the entire study as watertight as an iron bucket. Xiaoheng would only feel at ease using his real identity in a place like this. Gunyenji followed Hijichu to the study. Although it was broad daylight, the curtains in the study were drawn. Once the soundproof and light-blocking curtains were drawn, the entire room would be dark, so the ceiling lights were turned on. The ceiling lamp in the study room was a built-in LED tube, which made the study room as bright as day. On the east wall of the study hung an oversized curved TV that took up almost half the wall. The curved screen TV was connected to the computer. Xiaoheng connected the laptop he had brought over to the TV and gestured to Gunyenji and Hijichu. "So, this is my study." Hijichu frowned and corrected Xiaoheng. He turned to Gunyenji and said, "Sit." Gunyenji, she and Hijichu sat in two medieval-style carved chairs in front of the desk. Not long after, Reinitz was brought in blindfolded. Xiaoheng waved his hand to dismiss the man. "Close the door." The man saluted Xiaoheng and turned to leave. He closed the door and stood guard at the door. Xiaoheng said to Hijichu, "Professor He, can I trouble you to remove the bandage on Reinitz's face?" Gunyenji was worried that Hijichu wouldn't listen to Xiaoheng's orders, so she quickly said, "I'll do it." She stood up and Hijichu pulled her back. "Sit down. I'll do it." He walked over to Reinitz with a cold expression and removed the bandage covering his eyes. Reinitz rubbed his eyes and took a while to adjust to the light in the room. He narrowed his eyes and looked at them one by one. Because he had heard Xiaoheng's voice first, Reinitz still didn't believe it. Shouldn't he be leading a team to participate in the International Special Forces competition in another country? How did he appear in this country? It wasn't until the bandage covering his eyes was removed that Reinitz saw Hua Xiaoheng's impeccably handsome face with his own eyes. Only then did he believe that not only him but the entire world had been fooled by this man. Although he was very unconvinced, he didn't show it on his face at all. It was as if he didn't see Hua Xiaoheng at all. His gaze swept past his face and landed on Gunyanji, who was sitting diagonally in front of Hua Xiaoheng. Gunyanji wore a fitted, simple navy blue cotton t-shirt and a low-waisted blue and white floral skirt. Navy blue really suited her color very well. It complemented her skin as white as snow and her features were exquisite and beautiful. Her eyes were clearly black and white. Because the white was too white and the black was too dark, there was a faint blue tint in her eyes. Reinitz smiled at her and said gently, "Sirius, I haven't seen you for a day and you've become even more beautiful." Gunyanji was speechless. "Director Reinitz, you flatter me." Hua Xiaoheng acted as if Reinitz was praising him and not Gunyanji. He sat in the high-back chair behind the desk and clasped his hands on the desk in front of him. He smiled and stretched out his hand. "Please sit." He was pointing at a single sofa in the corner of the study. Reinitz was still shackled, so it wasn't convenient for him to move. He glanced at the single sofa in the corner, then looked at where Gunyanji was sitting. He smiled and said, "No need, I'll sit over there." As he spoke, he walked over to Gunyanji and crossed his legs to sit on the floor next to her feet. The floor was covered with a thick Persian carpet with a simple geometric pattern. It was relaxing to look at. Hua Xiaoheng didn't mind. Hijichu was sitting next to Gunyanji anyway. If Reinitz dared to make a move, Hijichu would shoot him. As expected, Hijichu didn't even look up. He said coldly, "Hurry up and start. I still have to rest after you finish." Hua Xiaoheng nodded and played the footage from the pinhole camera on the computer. Because the computer was connected to the curved TV on the wall, the video was also played on the curved TV. Compared to Hua Xiaoheng's ultra-thin laptop, the large curved TV on the wall was of course much clearer. Gunyanji explained to Reinitz, "This is one of the 4 clinics my father mentioned. We went to 2 today. One is the DAS clinic, which receives the most aid from the foundation, and the other is the largest baddie clinic." Reinitz didn't know what these people were going to do, but when he heard that they went to 2 of the 4 clinics, he immediately perked up. If he hadn't been caught by the 2 men in front of him, he would probably be in disguise right now to go to these clinics to find out information. The curved TV on the wall began to play what Gunyanji and Hua Xiaoheng saw in the 2 clinics that morning. The video didn't last long, so Reinitz was confused. He asked in confusion, "That's it? Why didn't you continue asking?" Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Didn't Asians like this saying? Was it encouraging others to enter the tiger's den and catch the tiger cub for themselves? Reinitz, who had only learned Mandarin for half a year, felt that it was too damn difficult to learn. Hua Xiaoheng paused the video with the mouse and switched to another image. The image showed a folder titled Oral Records, Japan's World War II Secret Plan. When Reinitz saw this, he finally shut his mouth and looked nervously at the curved TV screen. He waited for a long time, but Hua Xiaoheng didn't move. Without turning around, he asked, "Why aren't you opening the folder?" "Before I open the folder, I want to ask you, Reinitz, do you know what kind of data you're looking for?" Even at this point, Hua Xiaoheng didn't forget to squeeze out the value of Reinitz's information. Reinitz didn't even look at him. He stared at the TV screen and said dryly, "Why are you asking me? Don't you already know?" Hua Xiaoheng nodded firmly. "I understand. It looks like my speculation was completely correct." The folder's name indicated the content of his speculation. Reinitz, however, was prejudiced. As soon as he saw the folder, he thought Hua Xiaoheng knew everything and unknowingly revealed his trump card. Gunyanji turned around and made a heart sign to Hua Xiaoheng. Reinitz looked up in shock and asked, "What did you say? This is just your speculation." He turned around and pointed at the folder on the curved TV screen. "Don't you have evidence? How can it be speculation?" Hua Xiaoheng's smile widened. "When did I say I had evidence? This is just a folder. The content inside has yet to be filled." As he spoke, he clicked on the folder. There was really nothing inside. It was empty. He had been tricked. Reinitz turned around abruptly and glared at Hua Xiaoheng. Although he was handcuffed, he still gave Hua Xiaoheng the middle finger. Hua Xiaoheng put away his smile and began to click on other folders with the mouse in one hand. He said, "Director Reinitz, don't be angry. You're already so angry now. What are you going to do later? Will you jump off a building in anger? Or jump into a river?" This is the second update of the day, Chapter 1178, Reveal Your Trump Card. Today is the second day of the double monthly vote. Everyone continue to vote. Don't stop. At 8 o'clock in the evening, the third update. P.S. Yesterday I only slept 4 hours for the fourth update. I can't take it anymore today, so it's the third update. Everyone hurry up and vote. We'll continue with the fourth update tomorrow. Mwah. Chapter 1187. Reinitz took a few deep breaths and forced himself to calm down. He said disdainfully, "Of course you're right now. It's my fault for not being as good as them." "Just because you're not as good as them? Don't you have any conscience?" Hua Xiaoheng coldly retorted and opened the picture player in another folder. Black and white photos appeared on the OLED HD TV with a large curved screen. It could be seen that these black and white photos had been digitally restored to restore the original photos as much as possible. However, photography and film technology from half a century ago was destined to be unable to be compared to high-definition photography technology, no matter how much it was restored. Even so, the somewhat blurry black and white photos still caused a huge visual impact on the people in the study. Other than Hua Xiaoheng, who had seen them many times but still felt a little uncomfortable every time he opened them, the other three people were already staring at them intently. Gu Nianji's first reaction when she saw these photos was to close her eyes. It was too horrible to look at. However, she subconsciously felt that Hua Xiaoheng would definitely not release unrelated photos, so she forced herself to open her eyes. These photos were all taken during World War II. The black and white photos had numb expressions on their faces. It was as if they were no longer human and had lost their feelings and consciousness. It was just a tree or a blade of grass that had been destroyed, crushed, divided, and killed, yet they could not cry out as humans. Perhaps they did cry out, but under the extreme tyranny, their cries were silently obliterated. This period of history made most Huaxia people tear up every time they saw it. They had to remind themselves and be filled with righteous indignation. Hua Xiaoheng's emotionless voice was like the narration in a documentary as it calmly rang out in the study. "These are some of the secret information we seized in the Northeast after our victory. These are all information photos taken by Japan's infamous digital army. They used live people to conduct countless cruel human experiments. The data from our human experiments are now appearing in all kinds of scientific works. For example, the water content of the human body is the masterpiece of this army." Gu Nianji's hand subconsciously grabbed her t-shirt. She couldn't even breathe. Reinitz looked at the TV screen expressionlessly and said indifferently, "Japan has indeed done a lot of disgusting things. The evil they had done had surpassed the purpose of the war itself. The destruction of humanity was the result of the uncontrollable evil of human nature. We are very sorry to cooperate with such a despicable country." Hua Xiaoheng smiled and looked down. "Isn't it too late for you to say that now?" "Whether it's too late or not, I sincerely believe so." As Reinitz spoke, he turned to look at Gu Nianji. His gaze flitted across her pretty face, which was now pale with fright. "I'm sorry," Gu Nianji's voice trembled as she said, "this has nothing to do with you. You don't have to apologize." "Unrelated?" Hua Xiaoheng smiled faintly as he shook his head. He clicked the mouse lightly and played another set of images and data. "The pictures you saw just now are all mentioned in history books. It has a lot to do with the case we are investigating, so I won't say more. What I'm about to show you is another set of secret information. This was the most secret plan of the Japanese digital army, and it was also the most unbearable plan. It was so secret that they refused to give it up even now. It was so unbearable that they didn't even dare to take it out after they were defeated in exchange for freedom from prosecution after the war. The leaders of the digital army even dared to take out the insane and outrageous experimental data shown earlier and hand it over to the victorious country in exchange for freedom from prosecution. And these plans were completely covered up and never dared to reveal a single thing. But Heaven's net has a long arm and it never escapes. Before Japan withdrew from the northeastern base of our country, they had a batch of materials that were not completely destroyed. In other words, the Huaxia Empire didn't want to see these Japanese destroy the evidence of their crimes, so they used their own lives to preserve this information from the fire. Although it was only a very small part, it was enough to know the whole picture. From these bits and pieces of top-secret information, combined with the historical records of our country, we pieced together Japan's wishful thinking and insane plan. Gu Nianji suddenly held her breath and turned to look at Hua Xiaoheng, waiting for him to reveal the answer. Hua Xiaoheng looked at her calmly and gave her a comforting smile as he opened another folder. The folder's name was Operation Borrowed Seed. A paragraph appeared on the curved TV screen. This paragraph came from the Song Dynasty's Qingba magazine: a Japanese boat drifted through the Song Dynasty's borders, a group of 30 to 20 people. The Japanese women were discovered, and when they encountered people from Zhongzhou, they chose beautiful women to sleep with. This was called borrowed seed. Hua Xiaoheng calmly explained, "This paragraph means that Japan began sending Japanese women to our country on a large scale to borrow seed during the Song Dynasty. Whenever they saw a tall and handsome man from our country, they would take the initiative to sleep with him until they became pregnant. These pregnant Japanese women would be sent back to Japan as treasures, and the daimyo would treat them as their wives. The sons of these women would become the daimyo's heirs, and the daughters would be treated as more precious candidates. Other aristocratic families would fight to marry them in order to improve their genes. So the Japanese aristocracy was once called the Chinese." The corners of Reinitz's lips twitched and he said in amazement, "So their ambitions began in ancient times." Yes, at that time they could only be called thieves. But during World War I and World War II, their ambitions greatly expanded in the face of the weak and impoverished Wuxia Empire. They were no longer satisfied with petty thievery, and they began to forcibly plunder on a large scale. Hua Xiaoheng opened the second-last document in the folder, and his expression became even colder. Actually, since World War I, Japan had set up concentration camps in the northeast of the Wuxia Empire. During World War II, this notorious numerical unit expanded the scale of the concentration camps, and they specifically searched for tall and handsome men from the northern Wuxia Empire to send to their concentration camps. Here these men were literally studs. Their only purpose was to mate with Japanese women, get them pregnant, and give birth to countless children. At that time, artificial insemination technology didn't exist. If you wanted to get pregnant, you had to use the most primitive method. Also, this kind of mating wasn't for you to enjoy the pleasures of life, but for you to be forced to work countless times a day. This caused these men to age very quickly and they died very early. By the end of the war, everyone here had been killed, but there were still a few people who were smart and brave enough to use their lives to leave behind some information. However, these people were also all killed themselves. When our people took over the concentration camps, they saw this tragic scene. If they hadn't carefully combed through the entire concentration camps, this precious information wouldn't have been discovered, and this piece of evidence would have been lost in the long river of history. This period of history was indeed tragic, but what did it have to do with Gu Xiangguan? What did it have to do with her? Gu Nianji's heart was in her throat and she said nervously, "But I don't have any Japanese genes. Not at all. This has been proven before." During the estate dispute with Gu Yanran, Gu Nianji had relied on this information to defeat Gu Yanran in court. Yes. Hua Xiaoheng nodded. "You don't have Japanese genes, so we can't be sure if this has anything to do with it." One thing worth pointing out is that during the later stages of World War II, the numerical unit discovered that the children born from decades of mating Wuxia men and Japanese women weren't particularly outstanding, and there were very few cases of genetic modification. So the leader of the numerical unit changed the plan and decided not to use Wuxia men to mate with Japanese women. Instead, they would use Wuxia men to mate with Wuxia women, and the offspring would be screened. This was the third chapter for the day, Chapter 1179, Operation Borrowed Seed. Today is the second day of the double monthly vote. Everyone please continue to vote, don't stop. Everyone hurry up and vote for me, so give me some encouragement, and I'll continue with the fourth chapter tomorrow. Mwah. Chapter 1188. What are you talking about? Gu Nianji stammered. Her heart was about to jump out of her chest. What I mean is that Japan's infamous numerical unit changed their practices and no longer used Wuxia men to mate with Japanese women. Instead, they used Wuxia men and Wuxia women of the same language and race to produce offspring. This was inspired by the Nazis' racial optimization policy. Am I right, Director Reinitz? Hua Xiaoheng's voice was neither fast nor slow. His magnetic bass voice came from his chest and seemed to have its own echo. It gave Gu Nianji a great deal of pressure. Her face grew paler and paler. Her hands gripped the edge of her t-shirt and almost tore it. However, Hua Xiaoheng's gaze wasn't on her. Instead, he looked coldly at Reinitz and continued to speak with a slightly threatening tone. Director Reinitz, other people might not understand, but surely you understand what I mean, right? Reinitz's face was even paler than Gu Nianji's. He was Caucasian, so he was naturally pale. However, his pale complexion was completely devoid of blood. It was like opaque white cream. Reinhardz's facial features were deep, like a jade sculpture. His eyes were gentle, and every side profile was like an elegant and handsome angel in a medieval religious painting. But now, his gloomy expression didn't have a trace of an angel's kindness. Instead, it was like an angel had fallen to the mortal world to become a demon. The thick haze in his eyes made people shudder. "Why aren't you saying anything? Doesn't all of this sound familiar to you?" Huo Xiaoheng expressionlessly walked out from behind the desk and stood in front of Reinhardt. He looked down at him. "During World War II, was the racial optimization policy pursued by your predecessors the same as the Nazis?" Reinhardt's face twitched. He stood up using the chair and looked at Huo Xiaoheng with an even colder gaze. He said directly in German, "What do you mean? The crimes of the Nazis have been completely accounted for. Why are they blaming us for their mistakes? Their repentance and apology for their war crimes were much better than the Japanese." Huo Xiaoheng folded his hands behind his back and smiled ambiguously. "No, I'm not trying to account for the Nazis' war crimes with you. What I mean is, do you know that the race optimization policy of your predecessors did not end with the defeat of the Nazis? Anyone who has studied history knows that the Nazis' racial optimization policy forbade pure-blooded Germanic from marrying and having children with other races. They believe that only pure-blooded Germanic can give birth to the best Germanic offspring. Director Reinhardt, as the Supreme Commander of the Gestapo, do you know where your country's plan is still being implemented?" Huo Xiaoheng looked at Reinhardt with a half-smile, as if he was looking at a flying insect that had flown into a spider's web. No matter how hard the flying insect struggled, it could not escape the fate of being captured. Reinhardt's face turned even paler after hearing Huo Xiaoheng's words. He said coldly, "You make it sound better than a song. It's a pity you're not making up stories." Huo Xiaoheng's Bluetooth headset had an instant translation function. He understood Reinhardt's words and replied in English, "I'm not making up a story. This is proven by historical data." "Historical data?" Reinhardt's heart skipped a beat. "You have historical data from our country? Historical data that even I have never seen before?" "Of course." Huo Xiaoheng smiled slightly and walked back behind the desk. He opened a new folder again and opened a few information files. These are historical data that was discovered around the same time as the Japanese's Operation Borrowed Seed. It was in the concentration camp in the northeast of the Huaxia Empire. Huo Xiaoheng used the mouse to point at the words on the file. "It's all in Japanese and we've already translated it. What's recorded here is not the Japanese plan, but the Nazi racial optimization policy." As the pictures appeared on the curved TV screen, the English and Chinese translations alternated, and the study fell into a deathly silence. The Supreme Commander of the Nazis decided to move the plan underground and carry it out in secret. On XX month XX day XX year, they selected the most outstanding men and women of the Germanic race and transferred them to the mountains of the Alps. The children born there were raised as orphans in a high-class private school near Munich. According to our intelligence, the Nazis made extraordinary efforts to implement the racial optimization policy. The people they selected to implement the racial optimization policy included the elite representatives of all levels of the Germanic race at that time, including the last of their royal family, several men from the Hohenzollern family. When the English translation of the name Hohenzollern appeared on the screen, Reinhardt covered his face with his hands and let out a low roar. His entire body collapsed to the ground. The information file wasn't long, but there were too many clues that matched Reinhardt's experiences. He finally understood why he had no parents when he was a descendant of the last royal family, the Hohenzollern family. He had to be raised as an orphan in a high-class private school on the outskirts of Munich. The school was fully equipped, from a nursery for newborns to the 3 grades of high school. It could raise a child who was born an orphan until he graduated from high school without any interference from the outside world. The school building was an ancient castle from 100 years ago. It had been meticulously renovated and was very comfortable. Although the children were orphans, every one of them would recognize the teachers who raised them as their parents. When Reinhardt was growing up, he had more than one father and mother who cared for him. Mother Hannah and godfather Lidishi were all key people who had a great influence on his life. However, in the information Huo Xiaoheng showed him, these people had almost instantly turned from noble and kind angels into repulsive devils. What kind of feelings did they have when they raised these children who were bred like animals? Did they treat them as the hope and future of the human race, or did they treat them as lab rats? Reinitz's entire body trembled violently, as if he was convulsing, or as if he had malaria and was swaying. On the curved screen TV, the commentary for the information file sounded again. After a long period of experimentation, the executors of the Japanese's Operation Borrowed Seed discovered that the results weren't as good as they had expected. In other words, the results were minimal to the point where they didn't have any effect at all. Just as their plan was in trouble, World War II broke out, and they became comrades on the same front as the Nazis. As a result, the Nazis' racial optimization policy quickly attracted the attention of the Japanese and was adopted by their numerical troops. However, the Japanese approach was a little different from the Nazis. They weren't looking for the possibility of racial optimization within their own race. Because history has proven that the descendants born from intermarriage between their own race degenerated with each generation and were completely unable to support the development of the race. On the other hand, the Wuxia people who were separated from them by the sea, were thriving with each generation and had created a brilliant and glorious civilization. This was what they admired and coveted, and it was also the foundation and root of Operation Borrowed Seed. However, the plan to mix the blood of the Wuxia people into the Japanese race wasn't successful. The combination of the two could barely stop them from degenerating, but it couldn't really optimize their development. It also couldn't allow them to produce true geniuses who could influence the course of humanity. Reinitz covered his ears and rolled around on the ground. He didn't want to hear the commentary in the expansion pack. Gunyenji was very sad to see this. She half squatted down and gently pushed Reinitz's shoulder with one hand. She whispered, "Reinitz? Do you want some coffee to calm yourself down?" Reinitz's hand suddenly reached forward and grabbed Gunyenji's hand. His dark blue eyes were bloodshot. "Serious, you don't have to comfort me. You're no better than me," Reinitz said through gritted teeth. He glared at Gunyenji, wanting to see her cry and break down. It was as though when he saw others break down and cry, his own pain would be shared by others and he wouldn't feel so sad. Gunyenji bit her lip tightly and shook her head with all her might. "No, I'm different from you." How are you different?" Reinitz was so agitated by He Xiaoheng's identity that he couldn't choose his words. Although his hands were handcuffed, they only restricted his wrists. He could still move his hands freely. He gripped Gunyenji's hand tightly and stood up from the ground. He moved closer to her with an almost ferocious expression. "Serious, do you know what data we've been looking for half a century? It's the data from the Borrowed Seed operation of the Japanese army. They used the fertility optimization data obtained from Wuxia men and Wuxia women multiple times. They've succeeded before. They've succeeded before." Reinitz screamed hysterically. Gunyenji's heart sank. She used all her strength to push Reinitz's hand away and shouted, "No. They won't succeed. They'll never succeed. You're lying. You're lying." She turned her head and looked at He Xiaoheng with teary eyes. Her lips trembled as she tried to get some comfort from him. However, He Xiaoheng's expression didn't change in the slightest. His gaze was as sharp as a hawk's as he watched Reinitz's every move. Occasionally his gaze swept past Gunyenji's panicked expression, but he didn't have any intention of comforting her. He didn't even look at her. His attitude not only made Gunyenji feel at a loss, but it also really angered someone, Hijichu. He pulled Gunyenji away from Reinitz's hand and held her in his arms. He enunciated each word clearly, "Enough. Don't speak nonsense. Nyenji's past has nothing to do with this dirty plan. It has nothing to do with it at all." He Xiaoheng forced himself not to look at Gunyenji's pleading eyes. He hardened his heart and waited for so long just for Hijichu to say this. In this plan to kill two birds with one stone, he first targeted Reinitz, then implicated Gunyenji, but in the end his real target was Hijichu. He Xiaoheng wasn't sure what the truth was, but he was certain that Hijichu must know. This is the first night watch for the day, chapter 1180, He Must Know. Today is the last day of September's double monthly votes. Everyone hurry up and cast your monthly votes. The second night watch at 1 p.m. and the third night watch at 8 p.m. I'll do my best today and see if I need the fourth night watch at 10 p.m. tonight. P.S. Thank you to Beth1211 for tipping me 10,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Mwah. Asterisk degree asterisk. Chapter 1189. As soon as Hijichu finished speaking, He Xiaoheng immediately said, "Does Professor He know what's going on?" He looked at Hijichu inquiringly and saw Gunyenji also look up from the corner of his eye. She eagerly grasped Hijichu's arm and asked, full of hope, "Professor He, you know, right? They never succeeded. That evil plan can't possibly succeed. He Jichu heard Hua Xiaoheng's question and immediately realized he had fallen into another trap. Hua Xiaoheng was truly willing to go to any lengths to find out Gu Nianji's past. A mocking sneer hung on his lips as he instantly calmed down and said coldly, "Do I still need to say this? Look at Nianji's age and think about the time of Operation Borrowed Seed. How could it have anything to do with Nianji? Gu Nianji would turn 20 in 6 months, so she was 19 and a half now. She grew up with you when she was 12? Before she was 12, she was with her father and lived in South America. Gu Yanran and Yi Xian can both testify. So Hua Xiao Reinitz, did you two agree to put on a show?" He Jichu calmly pointed out the loopholes in Hua Xiaoheng and Reinitz's conversation. He started with Gu Nianji's age, which was indeed a very powerful piece of evidence. Hua Xiaoheng acutely noticed that when He Jichu said Gu Nianji was with her father before she was 12, there was a brief pause. He squinted and instinctively tapped his fingers on the desk a few times before saying calmly, "Professor He, it's very obvious that if Operation Borrowed Seed has anything to do with Nianji." "It doesn't. It definitely doesn't." Gu Nianji interrupted Hua Xiaoheng and pointed at Reinitz. "Reinitz told me that my father also kept a pregnancy diary for my mother. They didn't give birth to me in a concentration camp." Reinitz was speechless. He and Hua Xiaoheng looked at each other. They were in the same profession, but Reinitz realized he wasn't on the same level as Hua Xiaoheng when it came to hiding their emotions. Hua Xiaoheng's most beloved woman was about to have an emotional breakdown in front of him, yet he could still remain indifferent and control the situation. Reinitz was ashamed of his self-control and self-restraint. If Gu Nianji loved him and he was Hua Xiaoheng, he would erase everything without hesitation. He didn't want to add to Gu Nianji's troubles. He only hoped that she could live happily. Unfortunately, it was just a beautiful thought. Reinitz also knew that he couldn't do it. Perhaps to people of his and Hua Xiaoheng's statuses, they were destined not to place their feelings above all else. Maternity diary? What's going on? Hua Xiaoheng looked at Gu Nianji. "Reinitz told you?" He turned to look at Reinitz again. "Can you explain this to me? How did you know that Gu Xiangwen kept a pregnancy diary?" Reinitz had only told Gu Nianji about this because he wanted her to be interested in going with him to find the data. Gu Nianji didn't have time to tell Hua Xiaoheng this. Reinitz's emotions had gradually calmed down. Although the depression in his heart was getting deeper, it wasn't difficult for him to hide it. Reinitz struggled to stand up from the ground again and used the back of the chair to support his numb legs. His voice returned to its usual gentle and polite tone. "I saw it in Gu Xiangwen's manuscript. It was the manuscript and letter that Gu Yanran gave to the Angels in the World Foundation. I worked at that foundation for a few years." He looked at Hua Xiaoheng calmly. He knew that Hua Xiaoheng must know what he meant by working at that foundation for a few years. Hua Xiaoheng and the others were no strangers to this kind of thing. Hua Xiaoheng looked away and lowered his head to type a few times on the computer. He said calmly, "Yes, even so, Nianji has nothing to do with that concentration camp. But what about her grandfather? Gu Haoze has nothing to do with that concentration camp?" Reinitz's heart tightened and he instinctively glanced at Gu Nianji. Reinitz was also the one who told Gu Nianji about her grandfather, Gu Xiangwen's father, Gu Haoze. Just last night, Gu Nianji had already told him about Gu Haoze in such a short time. It seemed like she trusted Hua Xiaoheng to the core. Reinitz held the back of the chair and slowly sat down. He rubbed his knees with his hands and nodded to answer Hua Xiaoheng's question. "Yes, Gu Haoze, Sirius grandfather, was sent to our bureau by that concentration camp." Reinitz's expression was solemn. Gu Haoze is a true master of psychology. He took all the information related to him with him. The only things that were left were some of the information that our predecessors in the bureau remembered, as well as the conclusions they came to after interacting with him. Our predecessors in the bureau remember very clearly that Gu Haoze was the genius that was successfully cultivated by Operation Borrowed Seed. His IQ was off the charts and his memory was amazing. He could remember any book with one glance. To him, he could get full marks for any subject just by reading it once. There was nothing he couldn't do, only things he didn't want to learn. Later he became obsessed with psychology. We thought it was just the habit of a genius to like to challenge unknown subjects and fields. In the end, we didn't expect that after studying psychology for half a year, he created a very powerful hypnosis technique and single-handedly overturned our entire bureau. From the top to the bottom, from the director to the guards guarding the door, everyone fell for it. When Reinitz said this, he looked at Gu Nianji. The expression in his eyes was gentle and complicated. How could he forget that Gu Hao's granddaughter, Gu Nianji, had also performed a great hypnosis in the online world in their bureau? That time she had wiped out all the information in their online system. She was even more ruthless than her grandfather, Gu Haoze. Could this be the legendary family history? Or could geniuses also be inherited? Hua Xiaoheng and He Zhichu also thought about what Gu Nianji had done at the same time. Hua Xiaoheng's eyes were filled with undisguised admiration and love. However, He Zhichu's eyes were filled with even more surprise and confusion. This confusion flashed through his eyes so quickly that almost no one noticed it. Gu Nianji also thought about what she had done at the Gestapo headquarters that time. She smiled slightly but still stubbornly retorted, "Even if my grandfather came out of that concentration camp and was also a genius, this doesn't prove that the Japanese Operation Borrowed Seed was a success, and it also doesn't prove that my grandfather was the result of Operation Borrowed Seed. Moreover, if it really was a success, wouldn't they have mass-produced geniuses? Why would they give such a good finished product to the Gestapo for nothing? Do you think that the Japanese spent so much effort to make a wedding dress for you?" Gu Nianji's rebuttal also stunned Reinitz. He instinctively retorted. "Actually, it wasn't that the Japanese wanted to give it to us for nothing, but at that time World War II was nearing its end, and they were about to be defeated. If they didn't send it to us, the Wuxia Empire and other countries would have taken all the information away. They didn't want others to benefit, and this kind of thing involved ethical taboos. Even now, scientists are trying to find a balance between ethics and scientific progress." Hua Xiaoheng's brows furrowed more tightly as he listened. He had always had a suspicion, but without any evidence he wouldn't easily say it. Thinking of this, Hua Xiaoheng glanced at He Zhichu again and asked calmly, "Professor He, you're very familiar with the Gu family. May I ask if you knew Nianji's grandfather? Where is he right now? Is he alive or has he already?" He Zhichu's answer was especially quick this time. "Gu Haoze? He passed away a long time ago." He Zhichu seemed to be recalling something in his mind, or perhaps he was trying hard to remember. "He passed away before Nianji was born. Nianji's grandmother passed away even earlier." He Zhichu thought about the situation of the Gu family's information. Gu Xiangwen and Gu Tian's parents passed away when they were relatively young. Gu Tian and Gu Jing both grew up with Gu Xiangwen. This is the second night watch for the day, Chapter 1181, The Origin of Family Knowledge. Today is the last day of September's double monthly votes. Everyone hurry up and cast your monthly votes. 8 o'clock at night, the third night watch. I'm going all out today and I'll see if I need the fourth night watch at 10 tonight. Moi. Chapter 1190. Professor He, are you really close to Nianji's family? Why haven't I heard you mention it before? Then do you know where the Gus are? Hua Xiaoheng smiled. If you had told me earlier, we could have avoided a lot of detours. He Zhichu was once again enraged by Hua Xiaoheng's easygoing attitude. Although he told himself not to get angry because this was Hua Xiaoheng's provocation, he couldn't help it when he saw Gu Nianji in his arms looking at him with a face full of tears and hope. He Zhichu sneered. "Yes, I'm very close to Nianji's family. Didn't you already know? I already said it, but did you believe me?" "Why wouldn't I believe you?" Hua Xiaoheng said calmly. "How do you know we won't believe you if you don't say it? You believe me just because I say it? Fine, I'll tell you again. Nianji is my fiancée. We've been engaged since we were young. Can you give her back to me?" He Zhichu knew Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng were married, but Gu Nianji didn't want others to know, so they were still secretly married. Because Reinitz was there, He Zhichu didn't directly say they were married. He only vaguely expressed his desire to be with Gu Nianji. He Zhichu held Gu Nianji in place with one hand and pointed at Hua Xiaoheng with the other. Seeing Hua Xiaoheng's livid expression, He Zhichu was extremely pleased. "Aha, you don't believe me now? Look at you. Which part of you really believes my words? You're just selectively believing what's good for you and ignoring or not admitting what's bad for you. Hua Xiaoheng, you set up these traps to trick me into talking. Do you really think you can accept the whole truth?" As He Zhichu laughed, he didn't forget to take out a small pack of wet tissues from his pocket. He tore open the packaging and took it out to wipe the tears off Gu Nianji's face. Hua Xiaoheng clenched his hands behind his back and used his iron will to control himself. He couldn't say anything that would make him regret it. He Zhichu carefully wiped Gu Nianji's face and continued to mock Hua Xiaoheng without looking up. "Why aren't you talking? Aren't you very capable? I only have one thing to say now. I can tell you everything, but the condition is that you return Nianji to me. If you can do it, I'll tell you." I Hijichu have never been afraid of any threats in my life. Except for Gunyenji. But this weakness was probably also Hua Xiaoheng's weakness. Therefore Hijichu was very relieved to say this. Hua Xiaoheng's hands loosened and tightened behind his back. If they were closer they could almost hear the sound of his joints cracking. Reinitz didn't know that Hijichu was Gunyenji's fiancé. In the past he would have taken the opportunity to mock him, but now he wasn't in the mood. What reason did a person who could even control his own birth and growth have to drag another person into his life? When his godfather, Li Dishi, secretly ordered him to bring Gunyenji back to Germany so that he could marry Gunyenji, Reinitz didn't say anything, but his heart was filled with indescribable joy. He didn't know how deep his feelings for Gunyenji were, but as soon as he heard Li Dishi say that he wanted the two of them to get married, he couldn't help imagining the two of them living together. They cooked together, did laundry together, had children together, bickered about their children's upbringing together, worried about their children's marriage and grew old together. When their hair turned gray, they could still sit on the balcony and watch the sunset together. But the truth that Hua Xiaoheng revealed today made him never dare to think about such a future again. If Gunyenji was with him, wouldn't that be a real tragedy? He was a product of the Nazi race optimization policy, and Gunyenji was probably the same because she was Gu Hao's granddaughter. B5 so Li Dishi wanted them to get married and have better offspring, right? Thinking of this, the corners of Reinitz's lips curled up into a sneer. Originally they could only allow Germanic people to marry and have children with each other. Now Li Dishi allowed Reinitz to marry and have children with a woman of pure Chinese descent. It was obvious how much they coveted Gu Hao's genes, right? Reinitz took a deep breath and his legs gradually returned to normal. Although he was still shackled and couldn't sneak out, his daily movements were not affected. Reinitz rubbed his knees and his expression became indifferent. His ascetic face now had an otherworldly handsomeness. The corners of Hua Xiaoheng's eyes twitched in the face of Hijichu's mockery. He pursed his lips and his voice was a bit hoarse when he spoke. He still couldn't accept Hijichu's conditions. A person who insisted on his principles could only settle for the next best thing now. He said, "Fine, you don't have to answer my question. But aren't you even going to answer Nianji's question? Was her grandfather, Gu Haoze, the success of Operation Borrowed Seed like Reinitz said?" Hua Xiaoheng remembered Reinitz shouting, they succeeded before, when he was on the verge of a mental breakdown. Hijichu said coldly, "Nianji's genes don't have Japanese characteristics. She's not Japanese. She's pure Huaxia. This means that her grandfather was also pure Huaxia and didn't have Japanese genes. I don't know what you mean by insisting that Gu Haoze is connected to that disgusting Operation Borrowed Seed." According to our information, the later stages of Operation Borrowed Seed were to use pure Huaxia people to reproduce with Huaxia people. Hua Xiaoheng was very concerned about this point. If this fact was true, then it meant that the data that Reinitz was investigating completely belonged to the Huaxia people. This kind of thing absolutely couldn't fall into the hands of foreigners. Gunyenji listened on the side for a long time, and her emotions gradually recovered. When she heard Reinitz say that Operation Borrowed Seed had succeeded before, she immediately thought of her grandfather, Gu Haoze, who was a master of psychology, and almost broke down. But after the initial shock, she began to think about the entire matter on her own. She thought about every word that Reinitz said as well as all the information that Hua Xiaoheng had presented. She pushed Hijichu's hand away and stood next to him. She asked Reinitz thoughtfully, "Reinitz, according to the information that you know, Operation Borrowed Seed has only succeeded once?" Reinitz nodded indifferently. His pleasant baritone voice was gentle and trustworthy as he said, "Yes, the seniors in our bureau have seen the information. This question is very clear. It has only succeeded once and they said that it was your grandfather, Gu Haoze. That was why they couldn't bear to torture him in any way, and they couldn't even bear to use him for research. The Japanese biologists in the digital army all had the mentality that he was a perfect work of art and must be preserved and passed down. This mentality allowed Gu Haoze to walk out of the concentration camp in the northeast of the Huaxia Empire in one piece and arrive at the Gestapo's headquarters in Europe. There he was evaluated and observed around the clock. Reinitz concluded, "It's just a pity that the evaluation and observation data from that time were also taken away by your grandfather. Otherwise, he would have been able to give you more information." Gunyenji didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she shook her head. "There's no need. This is pretty good. When your grandfather left he was only 19 years old. He's about the same age as you are now." Reinitz hesitated for a moment before saying this. In reality, he didn't need to go into so much detail. He only needed to say that he didn't know. After all the information had indeed been taken away by Gu Haoze. But seeing how upset Gu Nianji was and how close she was to breaking down, he still chose to tell her everything he knew about Gu Haoze. Perhaps it was to make up for his bad attitude earlier. He Jichu also added on from the side, "Your grandfather only got married and had children after he left the control of those people. Your father was born in France. Your grandparents passed away a long time ago, but I really don't know where your father is now. I also don't know whether he's alive or dead." This was all the information He Jichu had on the Gu family. But in the information He Jichu had, there was nothing that indicated that Gu Haoze was a genius. Perhaps after escaping from the hands of the Gestapo and the Japanese, Gu Haoze chose to conceal his identity and live as a normal person. Pretending to be a genius was very easy to expose, but pretending to be a normal person was extremely easy. Gu Nianji nodded and looked at Hu Xiaoheng. She said calmly, "I understand now." Combining Professor He's and Reinitz's words, I still conclude that Operation Borrowed Seed has never succeeded. It has never succeeded. Wu Xiao, what do you think? Wu Xiaoheng's eyes flashed. Why do you think so? He absolutely didn't want the Japanese to succeed with Operation Borrowed Seed, but before eliminating all possibilities of success, he had to be objective and cautious. He couldn't be as emotional as Gu Nianji. He understood how Gu Nianji felt, but to make such a conclusion he needed evidence to convince him. Gu Nianji's mind quickly searched for the flash of inspiration that had just flashed by. After a while she looked up and smiled. I thought of it. This was the third watch of the day, chapter 1182, I thought of it. Today was the last day of double monthly votes in September. Everyone hurry up and cast your monthly votes. Were there no more monthly votes? Would more monthly votes fall into the hands of the Major General when the fourth watch of the day came at 10 o'clock? Moi. Chapter 1191. She thought of it so quickly, as expected of the best trial lawyer in his mind. Hu Xiaoheng raised his chin slightly, his eyes filled with undisguised admiration and praise. He nodded and said softly, "Go ahead." Gu Nianji organized her thoughts in her mind. She looked at Reinitz. Reinitz, the Japanese you mentioned clearly stated in the documents that their Operation Borrowed Seed, which was their human optimization experiment, was a success? Reinitz carefully thought about the memoirs left behind by his predecessors in the Bureau and said, that should be the case, but they also mentioned in the materials that they used countless Wuxia Empire people as experiments, but only this time was successful. The corners of Gu Nianji's eyes twitched. Used countless Wuxia Empire people as experiments? That meant they drove countless Wuxia Empire people to breed like livestock just to get a satisfactory offspring? They really worked hard. Gu Nianji's expression subconsciously became a bit sarcastic. Haha, these Japanese really put in a lot of effort to optimize our Wuxia Empire people's race. Reinitz was speechless. Ijichu snickered and shook his head. Hu Xiaoheng remained calm. Go on. Gu Nianji walked behind Hu Xiaoheng's desk and looked at the information displayed on the ultra-thin and ultralight laptop in front of him. It showed that Japan had established concentration camps in the northeast of the Wuxia Empire to conduct secret research that dated back to before World War I. From World War I to World War II, it spanned hundreds of years and involved at least 2 or 3 generations of people. Gu Nianji said with great regret and sorrow, such a large concentration camp, such a long time, and so many Wuxia Empire people were captured for all kinds of inhumane torture and experiments. In such a hell on earth they actually wanted to create supermen? They really daydreamed too much. They thought that just because they were strong and the other side was weak they could survive? Didn't they see that the Wuxia Empire people had never truly submitted in thousands of years? Gu Nianji shrugged. It's not that I'm slandering them, but I've always felt that the Japanese people have a deep sense of bigotry and perversion. Are these perverts born like this or are they developed after birth? I will leave this question to our scientists to continue their research. Are you saying that this race is mentally ill? The corners of Reinitz's lips twitched. Someone has mentioned this before. The crimes committed by the Japanese during World War II were something that even the Nazis could not tolerate. From this, it could be seen that they were even more brutal, vile, and unforgivable. Wu Xiaoheng immediately retorted, no, they're not mentally ill. Please do not use mental illness as an excuse for their cruelty. Gu Nianji nodded in agreement and added, mental patients can't control their own behavior, so they can escape legal punishment no matter what crime they commit. That's why I share the same opinion as Wuxia. They were clearly organized, conscious, and methodical criminals. The International Court of Justice has tried the relevant criminals. Although many people have escaped punishment, I believe that justice has long arms. They will definitely pay the price for their war crimes and crimes against humanity. However, this question has nothing to do with my conclusion. Gunyenji tactfully ended the topic. My opinion is very clear. The Japanese's Operation Borrowed Seed has been going on for hundreds or even thousands of years, but it has never succeeded. But how do you explain Gu Hao's existence? How do you explain his son Gu Xiangwen? And you, Gunyenji, are you all bugs that appeared when God created humans? Reinitz smiled. Of course, I would believe you if you said you had a cheat code. He was now able to speak to Gunyenji calmly. Perhaps it was because he felt that she was the same kind of person as him, so he had given up on his contradictory and hostile mentality? Reinitz had already given up on analyzing his own feelings. The corners of Gunyenji's lips curled up as her eyes drifted over Reinitz's face. Reinitz suddenly felt a bit uncomfortable. He could see a trace of disdain and contempt in Gunyenji's eyes, and he instantly felt uncomfortable. Gunyenji completely calmed down and said calmly, "We are not bugs, and we are definitely not the results of Japan's Operation Borrowed Seed. Why do you say that even if my grandfather, Gu Haoza, appeared, he was not the result of Japan's Operation Borrowed Seed? I must first clarify a conceptual issue here." Gunyenji's slender fingers flew across Xiaoheng's laptop as she pulled up the criteria for a successful scientific experiment from the internet. You see, there are fixed criteria for a successful scientific experiment. It's not like you can prove that you've predicted the pattern of human illness just because someone sneezes on a cold day. The most basic key to proving the success of a scientific experiment is to obtain a result that does not exceed the experimental error range under the same experimental conditions and the same experimental criteria. The experimental method must be repeatable. Not only must it be repeated in your own laboratory, but it must also be repeated by others. The final result must not exceed a certain error range for the experiment to be considered a success. You see, in recent years, all the papers in international scientific journals that were exposed to falsified data were judged to be falsified because other laboratories repeated the experiment according to the experimental method and couldn't obtain the results claimed by these papers. Right now, we don't have the experimental data of the Japanese Operation Borrowed Seed, but we do have their experimental methods, which Reinitz said were the memoirs written by the predecessors of their bureau who had seen the data. The specific data may be difficult to remember, but the experimental methods are very simple. Because they didn't have more advanced methods in that era, right? Gunyenji finished speaking and paused. Her large, bright eyes looked at Reinitz. Reinitz, can you recall what kind of experimental methods your predecessors mentioned? Reinitz was a bit embarrassed. Basically, the experiments on racial optimization in that era were conducted by real people with real knives and guns. In that concentration camp, people lost their dignity and were used like lab rats for all kinds of comparative research until the women became pregnant. However, the men were driven to impregnate more women to observe the growth and development of their offspring. After Reinitz finished speaking, the study was deathly silent. Gunyenji was a woman, so she couldn't empathize with him. However, the three men felt a faint pain in the ass. A literal pain in the ass. Gunyenji was the first to snap out of her daze and calmly said, "It's similar to what I imagined." So this was their experiment. They used this method in so many people, but in the end they only obtained one successful sample, Gu Haoza. Is this considered a success? If a scientific experiment can't be repeated and verified, then it can't be considered a success. Gunyenji came to the first conclusion. The birth of geniuses is highly accidental. Even without Operation Borrowed Seed, geniuses would still be born in this world. So as for Gu Haoza's appearance, I believe that he was a genius born normally. Perhaps he was born in that concentration camp by accident, and this has nothing to do with Operation Borrowed Seed. You have to know that if they didn't capture so many outstanding Wuxia men and women to study like animals, more geniuses would have been born among these Wuxia people. In this sense, Operation Borrowed Seed actually killed the possibility of countless geniuses being born in the summer of Wuxia. And Gu Haoza was just an uncontrollable accident in their experiment. Gunyenji came to the second conclusion with a solemn expression. So I believe that in the later stages, the Japanese Operation Borrowed Seed had already transitioned from the first goal, which was to study how to improve the Japanese race, to the second goal, which was to study how to destroy the Wuxia Empire. This was the real reason why they changed their experimental subjects. This is the fourth update for today, Chapter 1183, The Real Reason. Today is the last day of September's double monthly votes. Everyone hurry up and cast your monthly votes. Do you have your monthly votes? If you don't, then forget it. But remember to cast your monthly votes for October at 12 o'clock today. October's double is on the 7th day of the month. There won't be any double at the end of the month. Good night, my dears. Chapter 1192. Hua Xiaoheng's eyes almost lit up when he heard Gu Nianji's analysis. However, he quickly restrained himself and nodded without batting an eyelid. He said in a low voice, "That makes sense. This will explain a lot of questions that people don't understand." Really? Which questions do you not understand? He Zhichu's lips twitched as he said sarcastically, "Do you need Nianji to answer your questions?" Gu Nianji looked down and pursed her lips as she said quietly, "Actually, I never believed that the improvement and optimization of the human race could be achieved using this method of spoiling things through excessive enthusiasm." From the moment she heard Hua Xiaoheng describe Operation Borrowed Seed, she had this doubt. In her opinion, using this method to do scientific research was undoubtedly a dead end. I agree with you. He Zhichu looked at Gu Nianji in surprise. If you can think that way, then you've indeed grasped the crux of the problem. Such a method will never achieve true technological progress. Gu Nianji didn't have any memories from before she was 12 years old, but she had this intuition. He Zhichu couldn't help but think optimistically that he probably had a place in Gu Nianji's heart, right? Hua Xiaoheng clenched one hand into a fist and rested his chin on his hand. After a moment of silence, he said, "Then it makes sense. After the Japanese numerical unit was defeated, they handed over almost all other human experimental data to the victorious country at the time, but they didn't hand over this data. Because this data wasn't normal human experimental data. If they had really handed it over, even if the victorious country had selfish motives, they wouldn't have been able to accept such a pure sin. This also explains why Nianji's grandfather, Gu Haoze, did everything he could to take away the experimental data from the Gestapo headquarters." Reinitz also understood, so he said clearly in German, "Because that data wasn't about the optimization of the Huaxia human race, but data that targeted the genetic weaknesses of the Huaxia people? If that's the case, then I also understand why the predecessors of our bureau wrote some contradictory things in their memoirs. Perhaps they also saw it, but this kind of thing was too challenging to the ethical concepts of the people at the time, so they chose to be vague about it or keep their mouths shut. The Nazi race optimization policy was also very evil, but its main purpose was to optimize their own race. However, what the Japanese did was to drag other races down with them when they discovered that self-optimization was hopeless. In other words, as long as I get rid of the person running in front of me, I will be number one. This kind of wretched and shameful mentality made it so that they would never be the final victor. But if your grandfather Gu Haoze was an accident, an uncontrollable factor in the experiment, why didn't they just kill him? Why did they send him to the European Gestapo headquarters? Hua Xiaoheng felt that there were still things they didn't understand. Gu Nianji nodded. I'm considering that. Hua Xiao, do you remember why Gu Yanran and her mother, Gu Jing, were adopted by the Gus? Hua Xiaoheng was taken aback. You're saying that Gu Haoze is the root cause of the Gu family's hereditary illness? And Gu Haoze's genetic disease is the sequela of this plan? Gu Nianji laughed. Hua Xiao, your mind works faster than mine. Yes, that's what I meant. Therefore, there must be a reason why they had to do this. However, this was not related to the topic they were discussing at the moment. Gu Nianji continued, later, because the data was lost and because our country won the war, the Japanese couldn't capture our citizens on a large scale and send them to concentration camps to conduct experiments like they did during the war. Therefore, they returned to the first goal of Operation Borrowed Seed, which was to optimize their own race. Coupled with the development of science and technology, they didn't need to continue using such a stupid method to conduct human optimization experiments. Therefore, they set up these clinics to treat infertility. They directly stole the reproductive cells of patients who came to see them, carried out artificial insemination, and propagated them to observe the results of optimization. Hua Xiaoheng also walked to his laptop and opened another file. Gu Nianji completely agreed. My father must have also discovered their intentions, so he used this method to warn the people who were looking for the data. But if your father discovered that these clinics were conducting the same research, why didn't he report it? Reinitz asked curiously. I thought he hated this kind of thing. Of course he hated it, but do you think my father alone could go against the power of the entire country? Gunyanji glared at Reinitz. Moreover, I also investigated these clinics. They were truly researching the optimization of Japanese genes and didn't involve Wuxia genes. Therefore, I think my father was keeping a close eye on these clinics to prevent them from doing anything harmful to the Wuxia Empire. Reinitz chuckled and shook his head. Serious, you've never met your father. How can you be so sure that he's really a good person? However, Gunyanji said with certainty, I know. I just know that my father is definitely not a bad person. Not only is he not a bad person, but he's also a rare and capable good person. Hijichu silently looked away, unable to bear to look at Gunyanji's expression. Huo Xiaoheng had just looked up and was about to echo Gunyanji's words when he saw Hijichu look away. He felt that something was off. However, Hijichu was always vague and changed the subject. Now, he was even using Gunyanji's decision to stay or leave as a condition. Huo Xiaoheng decided not to try to get information from Hijichu again. He also wouldn't take the bits and pieces he revealed as the truth. He wanted to return to his previous way of working. Like Reinitz, he would doubt everything and rely on himself to prove everything. I just demonstrated my conclusion from the three perspectives of premise, history, and follow-up. That is, Operation Borrowed Seed did not succeed, and Operation Extermination also did not succeed. Gunyanji smiled as she looked up at the curved TV screen in front of her. Huo Xiaoheng had just opened another document. It was the cursive English poem that Gunyanji had taken a photo of in the Das Clinic's reception room. A little girl needs daddy. When the cursive poem hung on the wall was magnified on the curved TV screen, Gunyanji suddenly felt that the shape of the poem was somewhat familiar. The cursive English characters used curved lines to outline every English word. It really was as if every word could be written in a flower. However, the cursive English poem had long and short lines that were interconnected like vines. It was as if they were outlining a complicated picture. If someone who didn't know English looked at this poem, they would most likely not know it was a poem. They would only think it was a picture. It was an abstract painting drawn with black and white lines. Gunyanji's mind suddenly became clear when she realized it was a picture. She pointed at the TV screen and said, Look, if you look at the shape of this cursive English poem, doesn't it look like a picture? What picture? Hijichu glanced at it. I can't tell. Huo Xiaoheng stood behind the desk and leaned forward with both hands on the desk. He looked up at the magnified cursive English poem on the TV and nodded thoughtfully. It does look a bit familiar. Right? Gunyanji was excited. Say, don't you think this cursive English poem looks like a map of Africa? Huo Xiaoheng narrowed his eyes and slowly straightened his body. He stared at the picture without moving. Gradually, he stopped trying to read the English meaning of the cursive English words. Instead, he purely admired it as a picture. Sure enough, the picture was getting closer and closer to the map of Africa in his memory. Huo Xiaoheng bent down and immediately pulled up a map of Africa from the computer. He enlarged it and placed it side by side with the cursive English poem. With this comparison, everyone could see it. The arrangement of the cursive English poem was almost a mirror image of the general shape of the map of Africa. Gunyanji couldn't help but take the mouse from Huo Xiaoheng's hand and operate it herself. She opened a mapping software and copied the map of Africa into it. Then she copied the picture of the cursive English poem into it. She had the mapping software look for the point where the two overlapped. With the help of the mapping software, Gunyanji quickly discovered that there was an obvious bright spot at the bottom corner of the two pictures. That was the location of the last English word of the poem, there. The last two lines of the poem were, Sadiving deeper soaring high she'll always find him there. So as long as she dives into the deep sea or flies high in the sky, she will find him there. Gunyanji's heart skipped a beat. She hurriedly marked the place where the word, there, overlapped with the map of Africa. Then she pulled up the marked map of Africa and put it into the mapping software to search for latitude and longitude. Huo Xiaoheng, Hijichu, and Reinitz all quietly watched Gunyanji work quickly on the computer, waiting for her to discover the information left by her father. The mapping software took less than a second to search for latitude and longitude data. Gunyanji laughed. Latitude 33 degrees 55 minutes south, longitude 18 degrees 25 minutes east. This latitude and longitude is the second largest city in the southernmost country in Africa, Cape Town. It's there. My father must have left something there. Huo Xiaoheng saw the latitude and longitude as well as the name of Cape Town. His brows furrowed almost imperceptibly. How could it be such a coincidence? In order to find the true whereabouts of Gu Xiangwen's plane, MH210, he sent Zhao Liangzi to a small island in the Cape of Good Hope to facilitate the search of the nearby waters. The Cape of Good Hope was a landmark of Cape Town. It was only 2 kilometers away from Cape Town, a distance that could be reached on foot. This is today's first update, Chapter 1184, Could it be a coincidence? Today is the first day of the double monthly votes in October. Everyone hurry up and cast your guaranteed monthly votes. The second update will be at 1 p.m. and the third update will be at 8 p.m. I'll give it my all today. I'll continue with the fourth update at 10 p.m. tonight. Don't let me down, my dear friends. P.S. Thank you to Beth1211 for tipping me 10,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Mwah. Chapter 1193. First, I wish everyone a happy National Day. Everyone is happily taking a long vacation, but I don't have a long vacation. However, I won't miss out on everyone's updates. Once again, I would like to thank everyone for the monthly votes during September's double period. Thank you everyone for subscribing, voting, tipping, and reviewing. Major General September's monthly votes really surprised me. My hard work of updating every day for a month has finally moved everyone / greater than over equal to full / This is the fun of online literature. Without following the updates and participating in the monthly votes battle, I can't say that I've read online literature. Now for the first 7 days of October, there will still be double monthly votes. If my dear friends have monthly votes, you can vote for them immediately. Please vote for monthly votes X2. Please vote for monthly votes X2. Please vote for monthly votes X2. P.S. Today's first update, Chapter 1184, Is It a Coincidence?, has been updated. My dear friends, you can see it if you scroll forward. Chapter 1194. He Jichu didn't want to listen anymore, so he put his hands in his trouser pockets and walked to the window. The curtains weren't opened and he stood beside the milky white gauze curtains. He was wearing a light gray summer suit, and he stood tall and aloof. Gunyenji noticed He Jichu's movement, and her eyes flashed. She could feel He Jichu's disapproval. Was she wrong? But thinking about it again, He Jichu had also said many times that he didn't know Gu Xiangwen's whereabouts. Also, He Jichu had always acted like he knew about the past, which was before Gunyenji was 12 years old. After Gunyenji left the Gu family at 12 and was rescued by He Xiaoheng, He Jichu didn't know anything. From this perspective, there should be a reason why He Jichu didn't know about the Gu family's situation. Gunyenji quietly pondered He Jichu as she used the mouse to point at the coordinates of Cape Town. I want to go there and see. He Xiaoheng nodded. I'll go prepare and set off directly to Cape Town in Africa from here. Reinitz raised his handcuffs, his expression normal. I have no interest at all now. Can you let me go? He Xiaoheng ignored him and only waved at him to shut up. He looked at He Jichu by the window and then glanced at Gunyenji. Gunyenji understood and smiled at He Jichu's back. Professor He, do you want to go with us? He Jichu didn't look back and only shook his head. No, I only took a few days off. I still have things to do at school, so I can't be away for too long. Gunyenji didn't insist. Okay then, Professor He can go back first. When we come back from Cape Town, I'll talk to you? Yeah. He Jichu finally responded after a while. He Xiaoheng was already mentally prepared for He Jichu's reaction, so he didn't say much. He only reminded Gunyenji, Cape Town is in Africa. The situation there is complicated and security is not guaranteed. Be especially careful. Gunyenji nodded quickly. I understand. I'll go prepare now. In order to track down her father's whereabouts and her own background, Gunyenji couldn't care less. She left the study first and went back to her bedroom to pack her things. When He Jichu heard Gunyenji leave, he also turned around and walked out without a word, without looking at He Xiaoheng and Reinitz. Only Reinitz and He Xiaoheng were left in the study. The door of the study was gently closed by the person at the door, and the room was quiet. Reinitz raised his hands to He Xiaoheng again and said very seriously, Major General Hua, can you promise me to let me leave this place? I want to go back to China. You want to leave? Reinitz, have you forgotten that you are now my captive? He Xiaoheng folded his hands behind his back and looked at Reinitz calmly as he answered his question in English. Reinitz quickly switched to English. No, I didn't forget. I'm not as skilled as you, so I was captured by you. I accepted wholeheartedly. But you and I are just serving different masters. There is no deep hatred between the two of us, don't you think? Hua Xiaoheng smiled mysteriously and crossed his arms. Is that so? Is there no deep hatred between the two of us? I don't think so. Hua Xiaoheng put down his arms and walked over to Reinitz. He grabbed his collar and said coldly, Reinitz, the trap you set in the Alps almost made Nianji break down. Did you forget all that? But I didn't forget. He was going to bring up the past. Reinitz couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. At that time, he was the proud leader of the Gestapo and the director of the Federal Intelligence Agency. Although he was gradually attracted to Gu Nianji, his heart had always been on the interests of the country. Unlike now, Hua Xiaoheng's words had almost destroyed his faith. Reinitz was forcing himself to be calm, but his heart was actually already filled with despair. It was like standing in the wilderness of time and suddenly realizing that he was floating like duckweed. Fine, then do whatever you want. Reinitz closed his eyes. I don't regret what I've done. If I could do it all over again, I would still do it. Until he knew the truth. Hua Xiaoheng let go of Reinitz's collar and took a step back. He thought about it for a moment and seemed to have made up his mind. Reinitz, you know we have rules. I can't just let people go. Ha! Reinitz was a bit confused and said with disappointment, Don't you have special authority? In our line of work, there are so many things to do outside. How can we report everything to the Empire? Our country is different from your country, Hua Xiaoheng said calmly. Hua Xiaoheng said calmly, his expression extremely solemn. However, since you helped Nianji hide it, I can make an exception this time. Reinitz originally thought that there was no hope, but Hua Xiaoheng changed the topic and the situation immediately turned around. Reinitz looked at Hua Xiaoheng and smiled. You're making an exception, so there must be conditions, right? He was too familiar with the way people like them did things. Hua Xiaoheng didn't smile and still said very seriously, I hope that after you go back, you can pay close attention to your bureau's movements regarding the Japanese and keep me informed. As he spoke, Hua Xiaoheng stuffed a flash drive into Reinitz's hand. There's a password and phone number here. All you have to do is dial this phone number and enter the password to leave a message. Don't worry, I'm the only one who can check this email. Reinitz looked at Hua Xiaoheng in shock. This person really didn't do business at a loss. He was actually developing Reinitz as his inside man. Oh, Reinitz. Developing the head of a country's intelligence agency as his own inside man. Just the thought of it made him a bit excited. The corners of Reinitz's mouth twitched as he shook his head to get rid of this strange thought. He frowned and said, You want me to betray my country? No, I won't do such a thing. Just kill me. Hua Xiaoheng folded his hands behind his back and said calmly, No, I'm not asking you to betray your country. I don't need any information related to your country, but if you have any news regarding the Japanese, especially regarding their Operation Borrowed Seed, I hope that you will inform me immediately. This matter is very important to us, especially to Nianji, but it has nothing to do with your country's interests. Reinitz understood. Is it information related to the Japanese's Operation Borrowed Seed? Yes. Hua Xiaoheng looked down and opened a document on his laptop. He opened it for Reinitz to see. If you agree, sign your name on this memorandum of understanding for a cooperation agreement. There was a printer in the study, so Hua Xiaoheng printed out the English version of the Memorandum of Understanding in duplicate for Reinitz to sign. Reinitz quickly read through it and immediately signed his name. This Memorandum of Understanding was beneficial to both of them. With this Memorandum of Understanding, their interactions would be semi-official. Of course, it only stipulated that Reinitz had to fulfill his obligations. Hua Xiaoheng didn't have to do anything for the Gestapo at all. Reinitz had been in a hurry to escape at the time, so he hadn't thought about this issue carefully. It wasn't until he returned to his own country and took out the Memorandum of Understanding to look at it in detail that he discovered Hua Xiaoheng had tampered with it. At that moment, Hua Xiaoheng had already taken Gu Nianji to Cape Town, the second largest city in the southernmost country in Africa. Gu Nianji walked out of the airport and was greeted by a wave of heat that almost made her faint. Hua Xiaoheng supported her with one hand and pushed 2 suitcases with the other as he stood at the entrance of the airport. Nianji, this way. This way. In this country where black people were everywhere, Gu Nianji was very surprised to suddenly hear someone call her name in Mandarin. She turned her head in the direction of the voice and saw a handsome, dark-skinned face giving her a big smile. Brother Zhe. Why are you here? Gu Nianji carefully looked at the person and finally recognized him. It was actually Zhao Liangzi. This is the second night watch for the day, chapter 1185. Why are you here? Today is the first day of the double monthly votes for October. Everyone hurry up and cast your guaranteed monthly votes. 8 o'clock at night, the third night watch. I'm going to give it my all today. I'll continue with the fourth night watch at 10. Mwah. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.